First item we have is public comment. And we usually, as the town council, I believe, more or less limits it to 3 minutes, I believe. So if you would want to comment, just state your name and precinct number, and we'll go from there.
Go ahead,
Hi.
Bill. Oh, sorry. Didn't realize there was a vote.
My name is Karina Campobassa. I'm in precinct 3, and I just wanted to say very quickly, I am here because you have on the agenda that plastic bag ban. I'm with Mothers Out Front, and I'm also a member of Belle Isle Marsh, not that I'm here in that official capacity, but Mothers Out Front strongly supports the plastic bag ban, and I'm very excited. It's very opportune or very timely that you're having it on the agenda tonight because, as you probably know, Boston's plastic bag ban is going into effect on Friday, December 14th. So thank you very much for taking it up.
Anyone else?
Yes, I would like to speak. My name is Fumon Corey. I'm from Precinct 5. I live across the street from the chair, and I'm also a town council. It's a great neighborhood, it's right. And I want to keep it a great neighborhood. I want to keep it a great town, and I don't want to see it changed into a town such as Cambridge or Somerville, where everything seems to be radical. This town has never been radical. The Board of Health has been doing an excellent job, and they had smoking regulations that they put in 2015. And I appeared at that time and had an agreement with the members of that Board of Health that they would not ban smoking on beaches or parks. And all of a sudden now, 3 years later, the Board of Health is attempting to ban smoking on beaches and in parks. There's not a problem, of course, with banning it in athletic fields or public buildings, but now the Board of Health is, I think, overstepping its bounds, and I want to go on record as opposed to their intended ban of smoking on beaches and in parks and public-owned land. I want to go on record as opposed to them putting a 25-foot buffer zone around buildings, and opposed to them putting that same kind of zone outside of restaurants or taverns, where some of the restaurants in towns have put out chairs and tables for their smoking patrons so they can sit out there and have a smoke and not be standing outside like disgraced citizens because they can't smoke in the buildings anymore, so they have to go outside to have their smokes. I understand that there was a comment at the last conversation that 86% of the people don't smoke, but that doesn't mean you can't take the rights away from the 14% of the people that do smoke. They have a right to have pursuit of their pleasures, and if their pleasures are smoking, they have a right to smoke. And it does not seem like Winthrop is a town that should take anyone's rights away. Let me see, is there anything else? No, I think that covers it. I think we should not be banning parks, beaches, and public areas, and put a 25 buffer zone around buildings and restaurants.
The buffer zone doesn't cover restaurants, just let you know.
It says outdoor restaurants where food and beverages
Well, no, but I'm
served
saying that the
or
25.
otherwise consumed, so it does cover.
Okay. Any, yeah,
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, okay, forgot, membership associations. A membership association is just like a private home. If you pay dues and you belong to a private membership association or club, you should have a right to decide what you're going to do in your club. Most of those clubs in town have banned smoking inside their buildings, but all of them have smoking areas outside their buildings. The outside the front porch, which is a designated smoking area, and the backyard, which is a designated smoking area. All of the yacht clubs have designated smoking areas, although they banned inside smoking. And for the Board of Health to just say, you can't do what you want to do in your own property. Seems like a big stretch to me.
Hi, my name is Jean Maggio from Precinct 4. As a former member of a Board of Health, a number of years ago, we had a deal, one of the situations, with one of the restaurants in town, and it did have to do with a form of smoking. The restaurant's name is the Casbah, and I'm sure that the members of the board have received letters, anonymous, but letters from a citizen with major complaints about this restaurant. When I was on the Board of Health, and the offense that the Casbah had committed was that there was smoking.
Excuse me, but is this sort of out of order to
It's
be
public-
talking about the restaurant without notifying the restaurant
Well,
owner
it's
to
public
be here?
comment. It's public
And-
comment. She's not a member of the board.
I understand that, but if you're
I-
bringing up someone and talking about their business and complaints, that person should have an opportunity to be here to
Well,
represent himself.
We're not making any ruling on that.
He's not on the agenda.
No, but public comment's open to anything.
I'm just trying to give you some historical facts in the sense of why I'm making any kind of comment at all. We gave the restaurant the opportunity at that time, all they had to do was to build sort of a barrier between smoking area and where the food was being served. And in your smoking regulations, that is one of the things, that you cannot smoke in an area where food is served. And numerous times this has come up about this restaurant. I know when I was on the board, we gave them over a year to do something about it. They came back, they hadn't. We gave them a second year, nothing was done. And over the years, even though I haven't been on the board, I know various things through the Smoking Commission with Bonnie, who has gone in a number of times, has found offenses, et cetera, et cetera. I feel personally that, and I have nothing against the restaurant, from what I understand, the food is very good. And the objection is that still nothing has been done in the restaurant to make it so that it can be a facility where smoking is separated from the food service. The hookah, they claim, is not the same kind of product that a cigarette or a cigar is, but that is not the point. The point is that it should be separated by rule, by law, that you can't have a smoking facility within an eating area. I know also that the board gave them the opportunity in the summertime to have an outdoor seating area, so if they wanted to eat or smoke the hookah, they could do it outside. It wouldn't affect the people who are eating inside. I just feel that being one of the recipients of this letter and some of the complaints from people in the neighborhood, that the board should be aware and understand that over the years, I feel that the Casbah has not complied with the rules that have been set forth to them. I feel it is an insult to the Board of Health. I feel it is an insult to this community, because we require all other restaurants to abide by all the rules and the laws, and yet this facility does not. Thank you.
Hi, Suzanne Hitchcock, Bryan, Precinct 3. Thank you, Board of Health, for bringing up the issue of the plastic bag ban. I think it's totally appropriate that it is before the Board of Health. And I just want to point out that 88 communities in Massachusetts have now passed a plastic bag ban. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Casey Gall, I don't know what precinct I'm from.
What street?
The Herman Street, so
Precinct 1.
precinct 1, thank you. I'd like to just echo Mr. Boncory's statement about smoking outside of restaurants with, whether it be a 25-foot buffer zone, a 10-foot buffer zone. It's just something to think about for the Board of Public Health in terms of being a good neighbor, is if we say to our patrons,
So, what,
Winthrop
the
Farms.
Winthrop Arms,
what's the problem?
if we say to our patrons,
David, your father?
yes, yes, a smoker.
Okay.
If we say to our patrons that, they can't smoke within 25 feet of a building, of our building, they're gonna go across the street to one of our neighbor's house, and again, like people have brought up with plastic bags, bottles, nips, anything like that, we can't control what those people do with their cigarette butts, or their nips, or their plastic bags, and in turn, if a person were to throw a cigarette butt, and, another person throws a cigarette butt on our neighbor's lawn, we all of a sudden become bad neighbors, and we have it set up right now, just like with anything, we have an ashtray out front, there's people who come for entertainment, whether it be our food, our beverage, our hotel, that when they come and we offer them entertainment, we offer them an experience, they have the right to go outside, smoke a cigarette, relax, if that's, I'm not a smoker, I don't know what kind of release it gives them, but they have every right to do that, but to tell them that they would have to go 25 feet away, potentially onto a neighbor's lawn, like I said, and again, I can't control what you do, what anybody else does, if they were to litter, then all of a sudden we become bad neighbors, and it's not good for our business moving forward, or any business in the town moving forward.
Let me ask you a couple questions. First of all, the 25-foot buffer zone is only around municipal buildings. Has nothing to do with other businesses.
Mr. Boncourt's
Mr.
stated that.
Boncourt's incorrect on that point. Let
would you read the section
me
that-
finish. What you currently have in place right now in the regulations, it stipulates that you can prohibit smoking where food is served. The potential change is not just where it's served, but also where it's consumed. So for instance, if you have an outdoor area at the Winthrop Arms,
We do.
where and people are serving food,
Can't smoke though.
can't smoke out there. If you had an additional area out there where we're not being served, if people could go into the restaurant, bring out food, and sit there, nobody's waiting on them, they could smoke there. The potential change to the regulation is to change that. That's what's being considered. Now, in terms of what happens out on the sidewalk, we have nothing to do with that. The only area we're talking about a 25-foot buffer zone is around municipal buildings. So, my distinguished neighbor in town council is incorrect about a 25-foot buffer zone around other restaurants or other buildings. It's just municipal buildings. So if you, town hall, town library, DPW building, those kind of buildings. So if you had a ashtray outside the front door, we'd have no authority with it.
Could I read section 8 of your new proposal?
Yeah.
It says that smoking is hereby prohibited in all outdoor areas of restaurants, bars, and taverns where food and/or beverages are sold, served, or otherwise consumed or carried.
Right,
So
but it's
obviously,
not a 25-foot buffer.
but obviously it's a buffer zone if it's outside of these restaurants.
Well, it's
Taverns
part-
and,
If it's part of the restaurant, yes. But it's not a 25-foot situation.
I understand what you're saying, and I understand what Phil's saying, I just think that there's a gray area there where, as it's, to me, it just is read as, 25 foot from where food is served at our restaurant. You're saying that it's not there, he's saying that it is. I think that is enough to tell you that there's, a gray area in the way that it's written, and that it would have to be, written a little bit better, just so that it's understood, black and white. There's no,
I appreciate your
you know what I
comment.
mean? So,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Just note at 6:40, Vice Chair Astrid Wines has shown, so now the board is all here.
I have one.
Just to let you know, Astrid, it's being filmed, so the first 15 minutes that you've missed on public comment, you'll be able to watch it.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, one clarification based on your question. If a person
visiting the Winthrop Arms, went outside without food, without a beverage, are they allowed to smoke?
Well, if they're on the sidewalk,
Yes, outside,
there's
Outside the building.
there's no serving area there. What we're talking about particularly is an area.
They're saying
Don't bring
carrying-
food
if they're
outside.
carrying
But-
their- I'm sorry, if
Yes.
they're carrying their food that they're taking home, they're carrying food outside in that area.
Well,
And
to
this
be
is
consumed,
saying
I
you cannot go.
Let's see, what the regulations say. This, what you asked. So it says outdoor areas of restaurants. So it's not outdoor areas of the street. It's outdoor areas of restaurants, bars, and taverns. So they're not saying areas outside of restaurants. That would be a different, right? It says an outdoor area of a restaurant.
That's
Which that-
understood,
Which,
but
well, let me
our
finish.
our
So,
outdoor area is on the sidewalk, it's right next to the sidewalk, so
Yeah, but
that's
it's-
what I'm saying.
but at some point, you have a boundary between what's part of your restaurant, you pay taxes on it, I believe.
Yeah.
And you don't pay taxes on the street, so it's not part of your restaurant.
But the question I have is if somebody's smoking outside next to the area where food is being served, and somebody is sitting there and files a complaint that, you know.
If they say, for instance, if they file a complaint, say somebody is standing on the sidewalk smoking, I would tell them, we have no authority about what happens on the sidewalk. But if it's an area of your restaurant that is outdoors, where food, and it's again, part of the restaurant, if it was written areas outside of restaurants, that would be different than outdoor areas of a restaurant. So I think you have to look at it that way and say, here's a restaurant, bar, or tavern, we have an indoor part and we have an outdoor part where we have chairs and tables that are part of the restaurant. That's what it talks about, not talks about outside somewhere that's not part of your restaurant. But I'm still gonna, we're still gonna listen to this because that's what the purpose of this, to get feedback and whether it needs to be redrafted or whether people feel that they wanna make changes, that's what this is about. So I appreciate you coming. Say hi to your dad too.
I will.
Doctor. Any other public comments about anything? Yes, ma'am. Your
Hi,
name?
Gina Casetta, Precinct 3. I just wanted to extend my sincerest thanks to Astrid and the rest of the Board of Health for the very pungent letter that they wrote in regards to Massport and what the residents of Point Shirley have been dealing with regards to noise and pollution. And I look forward to now working with the Winthrop Airport Hazards Committee as a newly appointed member. And thank you, and hopefully we can join forces and maybe make a stronger impact in, if nothing else, bringing awareness to the town council, to other citizens who aren't even aware of possible, these fine particulates that we are being exposed to. And now with the Terminal E expansion set to go full force, in addition to that, Delta's doing another extension of Terminal C. So I believe we're now gonna probably get flights such low proximity, like 300 feet over homes, going about 23 hours out of a 24-hour cycle. So I just wanted to thank the Board of Health and Astrid for writing such a beautiful letter, and I appreciate the support. Thank you.
Anyone else? Public comment? Yes, sir.
Hi, Frank Ferrara.
I'm
I
sorry.
came late, and I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Could you just run the whole thing for me real quick as far as
Your name is again?
Frank Ferrara,
And we're at precinct two.
River Road?
One.
Precinct one?
He's not two.
Yeah. As far as the smoking, the proximities to restaurants and whatever, I mean, I really don't know what it's all about, but I heard something about it, and I'd like to know. I know you can't smoke in parks and beaches. This is my
Well,
question.
currently you can.
Well, now,
Parks and
you're trying to stop that.
Yes, I understand that. And as far as proximity to restaurants and whatnot in the town?
So, what currently you have, right now, you could literally stand right outside the door of town council and smoke. The town council building, the town hall, town library, et cetera. What a lot of communities have done is extend a buffer zone, because we know that secondhand smoke, if you're smoking door, actually seeps in the building, seeps in the windows, et cetera. So a lot of communities have done that. Most of these proposed changes, and again, they're proposed, it's not finalized yet, changes have been adopted by dozens of other communities, so we're not alone in this. The change in the restaurant, right now, if you're at an outdoor, first of all, you can't smoke in a restaurant anyway.
Correct.
But outside a restaurant, if a restaurant has an outdoor seating area and they have a wait person waiting on you, you can't smoke there. However, if it's an outdoor section of a restaurant and there's no wait person, you go inside and get food and come back out, there's smoking permitted. So the change that we've been suggested to make is to change that. Because if people are coming in now and they go get their food, they're sitting down and eating and they're expecting to have a nice meal, and all of a sudden somebody sits down next to them smoking, there's nothing you can do about it. So it kind of changes the whole atmosphere of the dining experience for that. But I understand what Councilman Boncory says, you know, we're always trying to balance rights of the individual versus the rights of the, you know, the greater good. So that's a delicate balance, but that's what we're talking about here.
So from what I understand, you want to impose a 45-foot bumper?
No.
No.
It's-
It has nothing to do with restaurants.
Right.
That's just about around municipal buildings. So town hall, town library, the public works building, these buildings that belong to the town and are used by the town. Otherwise, you can smoke anywhere in front of a restaurant. If it's not an outdoor seating area of the restaurant, you can smoke right outside the door of the restaurant.
Well, most people dine outside, go outside restaurants, they have a drink and the tobacco.
I don't understand that question.
Do most people do
My
that?
question is, these restaurants in the center area, these people, most people that drink, they smoke, and they need these people to survive, to make this town survive. And if they can't go outside and have a cigarette and something to eat,
Well, there's very few places right now that have that kind of seating area, as you know. That have an outside seating area. Probably only a couple that I can think of. Anyways, I appreciate your comments, sir.
Can I speak again when everybody's done?
Well, because you're a town councilor, we'll extend the courtesy to give you another 3 minutes.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say, I support the mothers out front. My son Joe is very active in getting them started, and my wife is a
This is
member.
not an endorsement of your son.
And we should ban the plastic bags, so I'm in favor of
Thank
that.
Thank you.
Yes. But on smoking, there's something you gotta understand. You're saying outside the restaurant that is property of the restaurant. Now, the Elks smoke on their front porch. That's up on the porch, part of their restaurant, part of their, it's not?
It's not.
It's not. The front
First
porch
of all,
is not
again,
part of,
but yes.
let me finish, let me
I
finish.
want to correct you there,
Okay.
because here's the restaurant. If you look at the restaurant division is on restaurants. The membership association is defined, and we have to, quite frankly, it's an area that the gentleman from the Cottage Park Yard Club was here at our public hearing last week. And it is a particular area that we want to look into, because as he disclosed, they've banned smoking inside the building.
All of the clubs.
But they have, but they have an area, which he explained, that members currently can take food out and they can smoke.
Sure.
Okay, so the outside provision, my interpretation of the way it's written, is only the outside area of restaurants, bars, and taverns. It doesn't say that. We're gonna look at, quite frankly, I wanna look at the legal case. There's a legal case in the city or town of Athol dealt with, and there's some other questions. But right now, outside area of a membership association, I don't think it would be covered. Just like, for instance, all of the golf course, I don't think would be covered. You're talking about the building, because that's inside.
But you are also banning smoking at membership.
No, it says in.
Association.
It says in. It says
In
in.
membership
It says in.
association.
Doesn't
In.
say at.
In the buildings,
in.
not
So I
outside.
think the interpretation would be
Okay.
in the building, not outside the building.
So that smoking on the porch at the Elks, smoking behind the Cottage Park Yacht Club or the Winthrop Yacht Club, where they sit and have drinks and they have their boats docked there, but they're on the pier, which is part of their association, and they're having a drink and smoking a cigar, or at the golf club on their porch having a drink and a cigar, you're not gonna
So
ban.
I think what we have to, I mean, just to be, I wanna make clear that point, which was raised by the gentleman and yourself right here. I wanna look at that issue further, because I wanna make sure we clarify exactly what it means.
Well,
Because
I
it
think
may,
we have to clarify,
I-
because I think you're stepping on people's private property when you're talking about
I understand,
Right.
I understand, that's why,
and the restaurant,
that's,
because that's their private property, the restaurant.
well, but it's, but the difference is they're serving the public, whereas the private association membership club is private. So there's different
It
public
is
and
a-
private, but anyway, the purpose of both the hearing and public comments, us get additional information, so I appreciate it, Counselor.
One other point, though, that we need to look at, even though you have a private membership association, oftentimes they are open to the public for, I'll use the Elks as an example, so they rent the space for a wedding, et cetera. So it's something else that we need to look at.
Yeah, we're gonna be clear on that, because there's probably gonna have to be further description on that second, because, yes,
Just as a sidebar comment, I think one of the biggest responsibilities that the Board of Health has is the health and well-being of the community. And I think that they're looking at it from the aspect of, we know through science that secondhand smoke is dangerous to the public. If you are not a smoker, secondhand smoke can kill you just as if you were smoking a cigarette. And I think the responsibility of the Board of Health is to look out for all the citizens of Winthrop. And I think we're missing that point dramatically here.
thank you. Okay. Wasn't that,
Just a question, what is defined as secondhand smoke for the people that may not be aware of whatever?
so, secondhand smoke is, if you're not a smoker, and basically somebody's smoking next to you, you're being affected by that smoke.
So that's understood, so I understand that now, but so in a public place, right, there's, like a beach where this ordinance might go on. If somebody's smoking downwind and I catch a breath of it, that's, but then again, I'm breathing all the other fresh air, if somebody walks by, that's, well, like anything, that's not gonna kill me. Just like,
Well, how do you know?
I mean, if the jet fuel was gonna kill us, it would be,
in the ocean.
Excuse me,
I just,
let one person speak.
I just don't think that, I think that the modification of the definition of secondhand smoke, I understand that, I think that, sustained secondhand smoke, whereas if you and I are sitting down and I'm smoking and just breathing it right in your face, then yes, that's harmful, I couldn't agree more.
Okay, well, let me-
But if I'm smoking a cigarette and you're walking by me on the beach and you breathe in, maybe a second of secondhand smoke and continue on, what's
What
any
happens-
different
what
from,
happens-
what's
what
any
happens-
different from a plane coming by,
Yeah, so let me-
dropping
let me
jet
just say-
fuel, that
say
you
you're
breathe
sitting-
in and then you keep going?
It's hard to talk about percentage, so if you're sitting there on the beach, enjoying your day, and all of a sudden somebody comes down, sits right next to you and is smoking, chain smoking. It's not, I
And that
understand
would
what
be
you,
considered sustained secondhand smoke, I
so
sense that.
you can't, it's like, you can't be like, to use a, you can't be a little pregnant, I mean, either are or you're not, so when we're talking about definitions of whether you can have smoke or not smoke, you can't say you can smoke a little bit. You either have smoking or you don't have smoking. Anyways, we're not gonna have a further discussion, I think,
I do have
I
a good point.
think we've heard, everybody had a comment that they've made.
I haven't spoken yet.
Look, this gentleman, because first of all, we have the ability to accept testimony to the end of December if you want to submit something further in writing.
I just have a question.
Okay, what's the question?
My question, as far as like this lady made a great point, secondhand smoke affects a lot of people. Within my secondary smoke to her, how close does the secondary smoke Have to be the person.
Yeah, see what,
If I'm 20 yards away,
There is no
it's not gonna
lowest
bother me.
limit that is healthy. There's no healthy limit of smoke, whatever smoke it is, secondhand or firsthand smoke. So there's no science that, there's no scientific lowest limit of smoke that is not dangerous.
There's no height either.
Excuse me?
There's no height either.
There's no highest either, but, there's no science that says when you only smoke one cigarette a day, you're gonna be fine, or if you only inhale one whiff of cigarette smoke a day, you're fine. That there's no such thing. That's why there is no defined lowest limit of smoke exposure that is not dangerous. So that's why all secondhand smoke is considered dangerous. If it's one whiff or if it's a whole day of exposure in somebody's car, So that's the issue, and we can't control that, and there's no way we can say, oh, you're only allowed to smoke, within 10 feet of another person or something like that. These regulations don't make sense because there's too much variation. There's not,
Just like
No
buses,
clear
trains, and
limits.
planes, cars.
yeah,
I mean,
well,
you
we
got buses,
can't.
you get trucks
Well,
going through the
cars
town,
are
blowing diesel fuel all over the
regulated,
place.
cars are regulated, you can't have a car running inside a building either. So, I think we've gotta be somewhat,
I'll let this-
scientific about
I'm gonna
this.
let this gentleman speak because he hasn't, and then I'll close the public comment section.
Robert Boncory, Precinct 1. Just one
Any
thing,
relation to this guy?
a little bit. He's my father, yes. The one thing you said that stood out to me was that we're doing this because other communities around us are doing it. So where's the need for this in Winthrop? Why is Winthrop doing it? Just because the other towns and municipalities are, is what I took from your statement earlier. The other thing is like clarifying what is a violation of this law. So if I'm walking down Herman Street with no intention of going near town, or into town hall, or anything to do with town hall, as soon as I cross the invisible line, I'm now in
Now, it
violation
says
of this
you
order.
can- If you haven't read you can read the regulation.
But so say
Well,
I
we-
haven't, a lot of people in the town won't have read that.
Well, what I'm saying is, so if you
So
walk.
if they're just
you
walking
walk-
up the street smoking a cigarette,
It's not gonna be effective.
Except that
but
this
they'll
shall
be in the
not apply
25
to a smoker transiting through such 25 feet area.
So if you're walking,
Well,
well,
if you
that's,
walk, if
I
you
didn't
walk,
see that. So
No.
that's the stuff that
Okay.
needs to be, it wasn't in the same as where, with all the prohibitions, it doesn't state that it's
sure it does,
what's
read the
interesting.
section on municipal, building, it says 25 foot from an entranceway, but it won't be if somebody is walking through or if they're going with the intent of putting it out before they enter the building.
Nor to a smoker approaching an entranceway with the intention of extinguishing a tobacco product.
So how would that be enforced either way, is the question.
So, well, the same way any other law or regulation is enforced. If somebody is violating it and they're caught violating it, it'll be enforced.
So who's to determine whether I'm transitioning from the
Well,
place or
it'd
through the area?
Well, it'd be fairly.
Well, I'm an attorney, and
I
the
understand
language
you're
is
attorney.
very important in
I
how we
understand.
enforce things. So if I'm walking out of a public building and I light up a cigarette, I'm transitioning out of that area, so I'm not in violation?
Well, you would be smart if you waited till you got 25 feet.
Well, I'm,
I don't think anyone
as
would.
someone that would
enforce it
probably
if you
going
were
to have
walk
to
away
defend
from a
people
building.
who are,
What I'm
found
saying
in
is
violation of this.
The idea is not for you to stand right outside town hall and light up and stay there standing there and smoking your cigarette. If you want to do that, you have business in town hall, you should get it further away. Because what happens is you're impacting the employees who work there. You might not realize that, but the smoke drifts into the building. So do you have any other comments, sir?
Well, the smoke drifts the building depending on the wind, the way the wind is blowing, but that's a whole separate issue.
Okay.
All right, the other issue I'd like to discuss is the smoking at the beach and other public areas. The beach is big, people have a choice where they sit on the beach. I don't feel that it's necessary to take someone's right away because it might offend somebody. I mean, that's just not the way this country does business. We're not,
The
We're not
DCR bans
reacting.
smoking on their beaches, you realize?
I'm sorry?
The DCR bans smoking on the beaches. So for instance, you can't smoke right now with the beach.
I do understand that, but
So where-
it's the beaches, it's the public places, it's, if I'm walking around the Ingleside Park and I have a cigarette, now I'm in violation of
Not
this.
if, no,
this.
not if you're in the park, not if you're outside the park, no.
So if I'm cutting through the park, Ingleside Park, then I would be in violation of this. And I just, where's the need for that? Why is that something that is on the Board of
Because
Health
here's the
agenda?
situation, we have a concert down there at the gazebo, there's 100 people down there right now, somebody comes down there, sits down, 100 people enjoying the concert. Two guys come down there, they pull out the cigars and start smoking, nothing can be done about it.
So, and we have concerts down there 5 days, 6 days a year.
I'm
where
just saying.
Now I'm in violation where I walk through that park every day. And it would be a
Well,
violation
it's the
to me
same way
now
you
to
have
do that.
violations if people don't stop at stop signs either. There are people
I
who
haven't
violate,
seen the connection.
there are people who violate regulations that aren't in the best interest of other people. So what we're trying to do here is doing what we think is right. But I appreciate your comments, sir. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to declare the public comment section over. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. The board will take those comments both on the smoking ordinance as well as the plastic bag ordinance under consideration. We're not going to be voting on either of those items at tonight's meeting.
And here I have one additional comment to make. We do have some very good information about secondhand smoke, and I will ask that we can get this posted onto the website, but it does reinforce pretty much what Dr. Lyons had stated. There is no safe level of exposure to secondhand smoke at any age. It can cause immediate harm to smokers and non-smokers and non-smokers and cause early death. But it's a very good, simple handout, and I
Does
think
it
it
tell you
gives,
anything about car exhaust, buses?
this is just,
Planes.
no.
I'm sure there's studies on that too, that we can dig out.
Thank you.
Meredith, could you read that? Great, thank you.
That's nice.
I guess I'm gonna do a time check at 7:03.
Very good. Okay. Okay. Next item I have here is review of minutes. Susan, you sent some minutes, I sent you some comments.
I saw them, thank
Some
you.
comments? So did you see the draft minutes? So what I had suggested was that on page one, when we had the approval of the past minutes, when we had the vote on page 3 on the workplace, public places, smoking regulation, and on the adjournment, that the vote should be listed as 3-0. I believe they're all 3-0. And on page 2, the class action suit is against pharmaceutical companies, not pharmacies, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. No, other than that, I would make a motion to approve the minutes with those changes.
Second.
Great,
All in favor?
thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susan, for doing those. Next on the agenda, we have, I got a communication from Al Heath to the attorney that the town's order of correct, the owner for Belle Isle Terrace, the owner's appeal of the town order of correct has been resolved, and the issues within the order of correct are now resolved, and the appeal is moot. Regarding 59 Cottage, which is, we wanted an update on that. We know that the town of order was upheld by the board, and we're waiting to see what's going to be done next. And according to the email from Attorney Fano, which was sent yesterday, Inspection Services is going to be working with the town manager to determine the next step. I had sent an email, which I included you folks to, that we wanted to know whether the town has gone to court to proceed with the next steps, and I asked for him to send us an email because Al's not going to be able to attend tonight's meeting, and I didn't want to wait until our January meeting to get some kind of response.
So are you saying that they did not procure a warrant?
I don't know. Well, the response from the attorney says, the Inspection Service Department is handling the matter by way of update, although this particular family has not been cooperative and refused help from the town. The inspection services, in our direction, the town manager's office will need to decide this next step for code enforcement. So I don't know the answer to your question. What's been done?
Okay, so at the last meeting, we left it that they would procure a warrant, administrative warrant, within 3 days. So it doesn't sound like has any action been taken.
I don't know for sure, because he didn't address that. So I asked Al whether or not the town had gone to court and proceeding with the next step. So hopefully we'll get a response. to
Away
that.
from, okay, await a response.
Yeah. So we'll keep that on the agenda. We'll keep that on the agenda for the next meeting.
Yes, but,
Well, I hope to get a response sooner.
exactly.
But I mean, in terms of public discussion, we can have it on the next meeting. The next issue, the distinguished vice chair was working on it.
Yes, so the next issue.
This was about, we had at our last public comment, I'll just introduce it, a gentleman was concerned about ragweed at Winthrop Beach.
Yeah, so there's an issue with potential ragweed on the beach, on the northern end of the beach, I believe. It's north of Cutler Street, that half of the beach, and that concerns a lot of residents living in the area due to potential allergenic effects to them. And they were asking us to look into, first of all, what kind of ragweeds there are, and then if they're allergenic and what can be done about it. So I have been in touch with Barbara Bishop about this, and I believe she had talked to the DCR officials. There's one person called George Ayub, I think is his name.
Jorge.
Yeah, Jorge, okay, so Jorge Ayub, sorry. And he's a ecologist from the DCR, and he has looked into the issue, could not identify ragweed on the beach, apparently. He said that the weeds that are there are not really ragweed. There are a different kind. There are, I don't know I forgot what it's called. But it's not the classic ragweed that makes the allergens, or is allergenic to people, but that doesn't mean that these plants aren't allergenic. So, and I don't know if they're invasive plants or if they're plants that are supposed to be there and supposed to grow there to stabilize the sand in the beach. So I think that's one issue we have to figure out. And I tried calling him as well as Sean Riley, but I couldn't get a hold of either of them. So I think we need some more information still on this. We only know the species that Jorge thinks they are, but he's not a botanist, so I could not find a botanist on the DCR website. I tried finding anyone that I could call and ask. So it remains kind of unresolved at this point, but I think we will get more information. And there should be some kind of a vegetation plan by the DCR that should be carried out. Is that right, Barbara?
Yes, yes.
You'd said
They
something
said they
about
were
that.
working on one.
Yeah, so I think something needs to be done. I at least want to know what kind of plants they are and if they're invasive plants, because if they're invasive, then they need to be removed.
Did you have anything you
That's
wanted
my
to
update.
add?
No, thanks.
So I'll stay on that issue, and I will continue to reach somebody there and figure out what's going on with those plants.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? Susan, did you want to talk about your meeting with Speaker DeLeo?
Sure.
Since you have such great representation
I
here
know.
today. I mean, you have so
This is
many
my
hats.
WCAT.
You have so many hats.
So on December 3rd, I had the pleasure of joining two colleagues from our collaborative that we're doing with Chelsea and Revere. Joanna Gorenstein, she is a lawyer. She's the program manager for Living Tobacco Free. out of MGH Community Health Associates. So she was representing Revere and other communities. And Sylvia Chang from Revere also, right?
Mhm. MGH review.
And I represented Winthrop. And the impetus for this meeting was Speaker DeLeo had a conversation with Jonina at our Winthrop Women's Health Forum recently, which was held a couple of months ago. And he had a number of questions on vaping. And of course, time didn't permit to really have a very good discussion. So a meeting was set up, and we met with him, as I said, on the 3rd. We met probably for an hour, and Jonina did a wonderful job. Has anyone here heard Jonina speak? So she's really an expert on the science of cigarettes as well as e-cigarettes. And our big topic was e-cigarettes and vaping in our youth and the dangers that it presents. I think we all know it's an epidemic proportions, and Jonina did a great job. It was like 101 on vaping, e-cigarettes, and the dangers, the health hazards that it's presenting. We did share some data. We have recent data that does show an increase since the Juul product came out, a big increase in our youth smoking. That's from our recent P&A that was just completed recently. And Jonina had some suggestions. One thing that you did mention, we've never taxed e-cigarettes, which is interesting. We do tax cigarettes. Some solutions. Banning flavored products. Winthrop actually did that as effective June 1, so we're ahead of the bar there. I think we all know the state will raise the minimum sale age on January 1, I believe. The legislature will increase that, but there is no plan right now to ban flavored products right now. What Winthrop has done, we banned it, only allowing sales in adult retail stores, which we don't have. The other concern that Jonina raised was the sale of menthol. Cigarettes are regulated by the FDA, so they are still able to be sold in e-cigarette as an e-cigarette flavor. So that's something else that we raised. But it was a very, very good discussion, and he's very concerned. See, next steps.
Quick question.
Sure.
It just popped into my head. Was there any discussion around the ability to buy Juuls and e-cigarettes on the internet?
We did have some discussion, and how is that going to be regulated?
Yeah,
And,
I mean, I know that that's a much bigger issue
Yeah,
than this.
yeah,
in
no
Massachusetts,
solutions.
but-
It was mentioned,
Mhm.
and I think one response was it's more at the federal level.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we know that they're looking at that,
Mhm.
and we know that they can still, we know that there's, the product developers are saying that they're putting more safeguards in to prevent teens from.
It's just such a huge
It is,
avenue
it
of
is,
access
it is,
right
it
now.
is.
Huge avenue
to
of
buy them.
access.
Exactly, exactly. There is a state DPH has a good campaign coming out. I really haven't seen much, but it's a media campaign against vaping, so we're trying.
Thank you, Susan.
Sure.
Okay, next item on the agenda, this number of months ago, Suzanne, by Brian, had sent me a question about whether the Board of Health had signed a letter to Governor Baker regarding national natural gas infrastructure. And we had received a letter back in April of 2017, at that time from the Mass Association of Health Boards. So I recently, and that was brought up by Suzanne a few months ago, earlier this year. So I checked with Mass Association of Health Boards and the Sierra Club, who had partnered with MHB about this, and they informed us that in fact in 2017 we did sign on to that letter. They have us on their list of communities, signing on to it in June of 2017. So, but I looked in our minutes, in our agenda, I couldn't find
I
it.
did as well. Well, we did not meet in June of 2017. We met the end of July.
So,
And I have no recall of signing the letter, or who in fact did sign it.
so we had a different chair at the time.
Yes.
So it's possible that we had this, it's possible when we had discussion, and neither Susan and I don't recollect it because Astrid wasn't on the board at that time, or that the chair signed on behalf of the board. So I don't know what this board wants to do, anything at all on the issue.
Well, what else were we, can I ask Suzanne a question? What else were you expecting from us?
Okay, so I originally had asked Bill, I was speaking before the Lowell Board of Health, asking them to please sign on a letter to Governor Baker saying we absolutely would like you to say we need a public health assessment before approving any new gas infrastructure. So I was told that Winthrop had signed on, so I asked Bill, I said, could you tell me what was persuasive, if there was anything that I could learn from how you made your decision, so I could take it
Okay.
to Lowell.
Okay.
That's where that came from. But anyway, we're listed as a signatory, and that's good. So,
Can I make a comment about this?
Yeah.
At a recent meeting that we had where Chief Flanagan was also included, was on emergency preparedness and met with two of the environmental groups. Winthrop is really in pretty good shape when it comes to our gas lines and things like that. They've been, we have a good working relationship with the National Grid. From what I understand, the comment that he made was that a lot of our gas infrastructure has been replaced or is in the process of being replaced, updated, whatever the correct term is for what they do with the natural gas lines. But that overall, Winthrop has an excellent relationship with National Grid, and that we're in pretty good shape when it comes to the gas lines, et cetera.
and
So this is
meant
about
new,
this is about interstate gas, and it's not particularly within.
Okay, well, I just thought I'd make
Yes.
that comment just
Within
for.
community.
not repair. Yeah.
And I think part of the concern was about frack gas.
Well, yes.
And creating new
New
gas lines,
infrastructure.
new infrastructure,
Basically,
so.
and
but the
ramping
moratorium
up how
that
much
we-
gas we use, yes.
So we are currently listed as a signee about the health risks of natural gas, which I agree with. So I'm not going to make any type of a motion to rescind it. At least from my perspective, but I certainly want to hear from.
No, I would second that. I guess at a national level, I understand our current administration, federal administration, has no opposition to future fossil fuel
Right.
restrictions.
Right.
It's a concern
And this
at the
recent,
federal level as well, so.
yeah, this recent email that I got from Dr. Jones, who works with, I guess the Sierra Club, said that, and we're considered, by the way, since we voted, we're on the honor roll. It's always good to get an honor. But 89 boards of health have endorsed this issue in terms of their concerns about interstate gas. So I think it's good. So, any comments? Okay.
I just have one other
Yeah.
comment. So, I'm just thinking of the recent Andover, Gabriel Lawrence. I mean,
Yeah.
that's another huge, I think, new development that I think if we were to discuss this further, to take into consideration.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my knowledge, reading about that issue, you have, I mean, I think there's two issues. One, people have concern about gas in general use, but also in terms of Merrimack Valley, it was human error that caused that. And so it's a very dangerous substance. So, anyway.
May I make a comment?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
The reason we have the good relationship with National Grid is because we had two houses that exploded. And so they came in and cleaned up Winthrop, which is small enough for them to do. But that's where it started here. Lawrence and North Andover are gonna have a good relationship too.
Could I make a comment too? So this concerns the locked out National Grid workers. So the reason why things exploded was because when they were putting in new gas pipelines, you know this. So a dead pipeline, they kept a live gas pressure sensor. So the pipe was discarded, but it was still there. They weren't going to use it. But the pressure sensor was still active. And that pressure sensor said, we need more gas. We need more pressure. So they upped the pressure and the whole thing blew. So that concerns me when there is repair work and we have replacement workers who may not know what they're doing with all the locked out workers. So just something to keep in mind.
I know Speaker DeLeo has had some legislation, I think, on that, he's working on something. Anyways, so,
So this is resolved for now?
this is, yeah,
Okay. Good.
okay. Next issue is workplace and public places smoking, which we've already heard from a little bit already this evening. And just in terms of history of people, kind of where we are. So the board, probably about 6 months ago or so, we started looking at the smoking regs. As people probably know, we updated our tobacco sales regulations to go to 21 with some other changes, and we looked first at our public smoking regs to include e-cigarettes, because of the regulations that were written 3 years ago did not include that. And then while we were at it, we looked at what some other communities were doing in this area, and we added some other changes, which we voted on. We appeared before the town council last Tuesday. Got some response from a couple of the councilors. We had a public hearing here last Thursday. We had a few people to talk about it. So in terms of whether folks wanted to, first of all, make any comment about what happened either at the town council or at the public hearing?
Sure. I guess the main takeaway or the main opposition that I heard was around membership associations. I heard that from at the town council as well as the public hearing. So I'd like to have more discussion around that.
Okay.
No, the other big point of opposition were the parks and beaches. I don't know if we want to have some more discussion on that. I think that, we are doing what other communities are doing. We're doing nothing out of the ordinary. We're protecting our citizens from secondhand smoke. Also in the outdoor spaces that we can regulate. And I think the beaches, in addition to the health effects, the environmental effects should not be disregarded. And I think they're very important to address in terms of litter of cigarette butts in the sand. And what health issues that causes to children ingesting them or wildlife ingesting them. I think that's something that we need to consider. That is actually plastic waste. Yes. And so while we're talking about plastic bags and all this stuff, I think we shouldn't disregard that either. But, you know, the main thing should be the secondhand smoke. And I remain very, you know, committed to banning smoking in parks and beaches and on beaches. I agree with Susan that we need to readdress the membership associations and clarify maybe exactly which areas we want to ban it in, indoors areas only, or we want to include outdoor spaces. I think there is some validity to the claim that we should not do that, the outdoor spaces, so I would be supportive of sort of limiting it clearly to indoor spaces, but I don't know what you guys think about that.
So let me propose this for a second. So we have nine changes that the new regulation. Let me go through those quickly and to see which ones we want to have further discussion about, and then let's hone in on those ones.
Okay.
So we've added a purpose section. Any reason to do anything with that? We added a prohibition on the use of e-cigarettes. Anything, no need to change that?
No.
So membership associations is one that we need further talk about.
Yep.
The addition of a prohibition within 25 feet of any municipal building entranceway. Any desire to discuss
I
that?
think that's very clear language
Okay.
there. Could we read that? Because
Sure.
it sounded like that was not clear to.
The area within 25 feet of any municipal building entranceway, so not even around the entire building, but around the entranceway itself, accessible to the public, except that this shall not apply to a smoker transiting through such 25-foot area, nor to a smoker approaching an entranceway with the intention of extinguishing a tobacco product.
Is that
I think
fine?
it's very clear.
Yeah. Okay. Prohibition in smoking bars? Okay. The prohibition in town-owned parks and beaches. You want any discussion on that? Nursing homes? Bus stop shelters and waiting areas? And the stronger language regarding smoking in outdoor areas of restaurants, bars, and taverns.
Can we read the text, please?
All outdoor areas of restaurants, bars, and taverns where food and/or beverages are sold, served, or otherwise consumed or carried.
I'm sorry, one more time.
All outdoor areas of restaurants, bars, and taverns where food and/or beverages are sold, served, or otherwise consumed or carried.
So this is the language that we took from Chelsea.
Yes.
Yes.
As I said, from my perspective, well, I'll put that down, so let's talk about that one first.
Because it may need clarification.
Yeah, let's talk about that, those two. So,
I think one clarification there should be that, you know, carried, like carried in a bag or carried to be consumed.
okay, so first of all, what we know here is we're talking about outdoor areas of restaurants, bars, and taverns. So it's not outdoor, it's not areas outside of restaurants. It's the areas within the outdoor area of a restaurant. So in other words, if we have a restaurant with a seating area outside, it's not on the sidewalk next to that. It's actually within that area, right? And we're talking where food and or beverages are sold. So currently, I think our regulations, let me read the current one, so we can compare. So currently, we have all outdoor areas what it means that areas of restaurant. But it says, all outdoor areas where food and or beverages are served to the public by employees of restaurants, bars, and taverns. So, right now, the limitation is, first of all, it's where food or beverages are served by employees. So that means if there's no service by employees as an outdoor part, then there's no prohibition for smoking.
Right now,
Right
that's
now.
correct.
So what we've tried to do here, and when we adopted the Chelsea language, is to say that we're not going to have it just where they're being served, but it's where they're being consumed, sold, or carried. So in other words, if
Purpose of the cat.
Yeah, I was just asking that, do we need the carried part?
Well, I think, Bill, you may have suggested that, because you could go in, purchase your food, carry it outside,
Yeah, but if you consume it there, then that's covered there, right?
and it was to cover that situation.
yeah, so I don't know, I
Done
don't know why
outside.
they have.
But we don't need that if we say
Sold,
consume,
otherwise
it's consumed
consumed.
there, because that's really the point, right? That you sit down and eat your food outside that
I
you
think
bought
it would be
inside.
taken out.
I think the carry part could be taken out, and that way it would be clarified that you can, of course, go to those, go buy food and sit down somewhere,
I think the other thing that
but not eat it there.
could be clearer, it's the wording, all outdoor areas.
Maybe an outdoor,
Well, it's not, it's all
See,
outdoor,
it's-
but it's part of the
clearer.
sentence, it's outdoor areas of restaurants, bars, and taverns where food or beverages are sold, served, otherwise consumed or carried. So it's not all outdoor areas of restaurants, it's where there is food and beverage involved, being sold, served, otherwise consumed or carried. So even if you got rid of the carried, you're talking about, if you had a stand out, part of this restaurant had a stand where you walked up and bought it, so that would be buying and selling. Serving would be served by a wait person, or consumed would be if you, I guess, sat there and ate it. And again, I don't know why they particularly had the word carried.
I don't think that needs to be in there
No.
personally.
So you want to eliminate the word carried or
Yeah,
carried?
or carried.
A couple other things while we're just looking at language. That I noticed when I read through it. So we'll eliminate or carried, number 8. I noticed in the Chelsea regs, because a couple of things that I wondered why we didn't have it in ours. So, not that we have them, but in the under the definition of smoking bar on page 3, the Chelsea one said, they included not only cigar bar and hookah bars, but they also had vape bars.
Wow.
So I don't know why we didn't include that, or it wasn't included in the one that was typed up at 8.
Read it one more time.
So right now, the last sentence says, the last sentence says, smoking bars shall include but not be limited to those establishments that are commonly known as cigar bars and hookah bars. That's what they put in our draft. Chelsea says, smoking bars shall include but not be limited to those establishments that are commonly known as cigar bars, hookah bars, and vape bars.
We could put vape bars in.
So I was just gonna
Anything
suggest we
against
add vape bars, since that's,
Yeah,
that's,
that's fine with me.
that's adding, so we'll add the vape bars.
And no such thing existed.
Well, that's the thing, is these,
They may be coming.
Oh, yeah.
or it's
no,
coming
I agree.
someplace.
I agree.
A couple other quick things, since we're gonna be talking, I think now about the membership association.
Yeah, I want to go back to the outdoor areas of
Yeah,
restaurants.
oh,
though,
okay.
too.
Let's go back to the outdoor.
I thought we were still on that one.
Okay, sorry.
So, the way I interpret this, any restaurant, you don't have to have outdoor seating. The way I read it, all outdoor areas of restaurants, bars, and taverns where food and or beverages are sold, comma.
Yeah,
So, if you had someone that doesn't have any outdoor seating,
then it doesn't cover it. So first of all,
this tells me that you can't smoke.
well, right now you can't smoke within a restaurant.
Right, this is outdoor.
Okay, so if you're talking outdoor area, where you say you have
Well, let's
something,
use an example of some restaurant in town
so, okay, so,
that does not have outdoor seating.
well, if they have outdoor seating, that whole section doesn't cover them. This is only for outdoor areas.
Correct.
So they would have to have an outdoor area for this provision to cover them.
Right.
Okay, I see how you're interpreting it. Okay, I'm just reading it.
Because indoor
Outdoor
areas,
area of the
indoor-
restaurant, outside,
yeah,
any restaurant.
No.
Okay, okay.
but it has to be part of the restaurant. It's not an area
Can we
outside of the
say
restaurant.
that? Can we say all outdoor areas part of restaurants, bars, and taverns instead of just
Okay,
all? So that it's not, it's really, because I think people have
Okay,
trouble understanding. They
Exactly.
think they can't go outside the front door and smoke a
Exactly.
cigarette
Exactly.
outside.
Okay.
Exactly.
And that's not what we intend
So,
to
why don't we
say
say-
here.
all outdoor,
Because right now it can say, it means restaurant, bars, and taverns where food and or beverages are sold, served, or otherwise consumed. So that could be misconstrued as just restaurants, bars, and taverns that are places where where food and beverages are sold, served, and otherwise consumed.
So why don't we
But we
say-
want to say outdoor areas where food and beverages are sold, served, and consumed.
so do you want to say something like all outdoor areas that are part of a restaurant?
No, I want to turn this around so that
Okay.
it's clear that
Yeah.
all outdoor areas where food and or beverages are sold, served, and otherwise consumed in restaurants, bars, and taverns, you know, that's what I mean. Like within restaurants, bars, and taverns, that it's clear that it's not just
Well-
any area, you know.
I wouldn't say that it within, because that is confusing. What I might say that you would say that, you're talking about an outdoor area that's part of the restaurant.
No, I understand what you want to say, but I want to say something else. I want to say, the issue is here, that this statement says now, all outdoor areas of restaurants, bars, and taverns. And then it says where food and beverages are sold, served, and otherwise consumed with respect to restaurants, bars, and taverns. But that's really applying to the outdoor areas. So I'm thinking it should be turned around. You know what I mean, Susan,
I
right?
think you're saying, I think we're
Yeah,
saying.
so that it doesn't say, because right now
Give
it
me-
says.
Write a sentence, and then
Oh.
let's talk about it. Because I think it's perfectly clear the way it's written, and I think the way you're talking about
No,
is unclear.
No, all outdoor
That's my
areas
opinion.
where
My
food
opinion,
and
got it.
or beverages are sold, served, or otherwise consumed that are part of restaurants, bars, and taverns. You know what I mean?
That sounds duplicative.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
How does this impact outdoor festivals such as the farmer's market? Where it's served and there is seating,
It's not a restaurant, bar, or tavern.
so it wouldn't
It's a general area.
impact it
No.
at all.
So it's gotta be part of a restaurant, so like outside Belle Isle Seafood has a deck out back, that's part of their restaurant.
I think this part is simple, it's understandable, I don't think you have to reverse anything, that's my personal opinion.
You get it, you
Part
get
of-
it, you get it, okay.
Okay.
I think
It's part, it's fine.
I think it's clear from my perspective. It's part of the restaurant.
But do you know what I'm saying, why?
Why don't we put a comma after taverns, so that it's clear that we're not referring to the establishment where food and beverages are sold, served, but the outdoor areas where food
Extension
and
of.
beverages.
Extension of?
Well,
You know what I mean?
I don't know if that makes, okay.
think we're overreaching,
I think-
overthinking.
I think it-
Well, but that's the point that people are not understanding, that's
no,
why I'm
I think,
concerned.
actually, I think they do understand. Because I think it's clear, it's an outdoor area of a restaurant, bar, or tavern. That's, I mean, it's, and then, but it's those places that are outside of a restaurant, bar, or tavern where food and beverages are sold. It's not like if you have a restaurant and
Yeah.
there's a fishing pier or something. Anyway, I don't think we should. But here's,
Where is the regulation prohibiting smoking inside? Am I not
Well, but
seeing
you
that?
have, because you have to
Where is
smoke, you have to, well, it shall be the responsibility of the employer to provide a smoke-free environment for all employees. So if you have a restaurant with people employed there, they can't smoke there. You can't smoke inside a restaurant because there are employees there.
Hopefully.
And you can't even, and even now, you can't have
Is
smoking in
that-
outdoor
is that-
area if it's being served. So anytime you have an
Right,
employee
right.
involved,
Right,
there's no smoking.
right, okay.
It's only on the areas where,
Plus, that's in the state regulations
yeah,
anyway.
Yeah.
but it's ours
Yeah.
too, because it says that. It says, it's a responsibility of the employee to provide a smoking
Yeah,
environment.
But not the
Okay.
outdoor areas
Right.
are not covered.
Okay, so, let's.
All right, so we're leaving it as is that right?
No, we're eliminating carried.
Carried, and that's it, okay.
And we added a bit, okay, so what I wanted to look, under membership association,
Mm-hmm.
so again, looking at the Chelsea one. In the Chelsea one, and their definition of membership association, in parentheses, after membership association, they put in parentheses, also known as a private club. And then also, then on page 3, is it 3 of ours? The next, on the, I guess it's 4 of ours. On the membership association, they also have in parentheses private clubs. So I'd like to suggest we make those two, because I think a lot of people don't know what a membership association is. And if you put in that it's basically a private club, I think people have a better understanding. So I'd like to make those two changes.
And then the question was also if we say distinctively indoor areas.
Well, so that's just, those are just on the definition, so that, yeah, let's get, so right now, it talks about, smoking is also hereby prohibited in membership associations. So I think it makes sense to try to figure out how to define that better.
Mhm.
Susan, you nicely sent us, I did not read the court case. Did you read the court case?
Okay, I did.
Good.
But I could bring it up, I did.
No, I
Did you
have
have
that.
your copy?
No,
Yeah.
that's a court case. Did you get this?
I got it, yes,
Okay.
I have it here.
So, so there's a section here on the Massachusetts Smoke-Free Workplace Law and Membership Association exemption. So, if you can tell me for a second, my understanding is that we can, if we want to, because we have the authority to pass restrictions that are stronger than state law.
I agree.
If we want to,
Correct.
we can prohibit smoking in membership associations.
Yes.
Even though right now, there's currently an exemption in the state law. Is that correct?
Correct. That's
And you
correct.
looked at the court case, which was
Mhm.
the
Athol.
American Lithuanian Naturalization Club of Athol versus the Board of Health of Athol. And my belief is that the finding was that the state, that the Board of Health did have authority, right?
Yes, that's correct. If you
Okay.
go all the way up to, go to Supreme Court, through.
Yeah, I didn't read the
courts.
case.
Yeah,
SJC had a review.
yeah.
So I didn't read the case, but I made it. So Susan, since you are diligent on this, did you have some suggested language that you thought we should add?
No, I just wanted us to revisit our decision. It's interesting, they also define what is a membership association in Ferenz Private Club.
Yeah.
As we know, all of our private clubs or membership associations in Winthrop do not allow smoking in enclosed spaces. So,
So that's good language there, because it talks about enclosed space here. Smoking may be permitted if the club's enclosed space is occupied. So that's one potential thing to talk about, enclosed space. But that would then not cover, obviously, unenclosed spaces.
right, which we know that they're not permitting smoking in enclosed spaces today.
On their own, though.
On their own, correct. And then there is a different clause, if the association is open to the public.
So here's another thing that says enclosed indoor space. The first one where it says, when may smoking be permitted, it says smoking may be permitted if it's enclosed space is occupied. But then the second one talks about smoking shall be prohibited in enclosed indoor space. So, do you think we should put something in along those lines that
Well, my
prohibit?
question is, are these membership associations allowed to allow smoking outside? They're not a restaurant, they're not a bar, they're not a tavern. So it's really going back to the question that was raised by Mr. Reynolds from Cottage Park Club.
So,
This really does not address outside smoking.
no, because I don't think, well, I don't think that they were trying to regulate
Right,
people
this
who
is
be smoking.
2005.
Well, not only that, but I don't think they were trying to say you can't, well, the question was about the buffer zone. I
Right.
don't think it's, they're looking here, both of these descriptions, the way I read it, they're talking either about enclosed space or enclosed indoor space. So I think that if we said that, because it says pursuant to MGL Chapter 270, smoking is also hereby prohibited in indoor enclosed spaces of membership associations?
Right.
Well, I'm suggesting maybe we add to, instead of just membership associations now with private clubs and parentheses, that we say indoor, enclosed indoor spaces of membership associations.
So that would not prohibit smoking outside.
Yes.
Right.
And I think that would respond to Mr. Reynolds' concern.
Well, I also
With
think,
others.
yeah, because otherwise, as you said, what do you do if you have the golf course? You have the whole golf course, do you say, do you leave it open that if you're saying you can't smoke at the golf club, does that mean the whole course? No, I don't think that would be the intent. I think the intent would be enclosed indoor spaces. Okay. So that's, thank you, Susan, for
Yeah, welcome.
doing that.
So that even if they bring food out, carry food outside to this outside space, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not a
Yes,
restaurant.
You're not a
so-
restaurant,
Right.
bar, or a tap. Good.
Right. Okay, so, here's what I would suggest, because we are still, we have testimony, or public comment, I should say, that was given tonight. We have still the potential that we may be receiving some additional communication by
That's
the end of the month, that we should, we can communicate to Bonnie, I can do that, these changes that we'd like to see done. In the meantime, we may get additional information come in.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
How long does the public have, until the 31st?
Yes.
Okay, for written comments?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we possibly may be voting on this in January.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan, for doing that.
Sure.
Do we have to pass a motion to add these languages, or is it?
What, do you want to? Do you want to take a vote on it or not?
We don't have to.
I don't think we need to,
Right, okay.
because we're gonna,
We'll be voting in January,
Right.
possibly.
yeah, I mean, and it's quite possible we may hear something that,
That could change this.
that's what I'm saying. It's always possible, so.
Okay.
Okay.
And then we'll get to the, gonna get to the bags in a minute.
Yes.
I know that's why you're,
Yes.
yes?
Yes.
Are you here for bags too?
I'm here for bags.
Oh.
Can't resist.
Are you bag ladies?
Yeah, we're the bag ladies. We are.
Of the best winter kind of bags.
Okay, so
It would be terror feeding of bag ladies.
we're not gonna
I
vote,
hope it.
I'm just gonna tell you, we're,
Yet here you are.
we're starting the process, but I'll get to that in a minute. I just wanna put this back in order. So I don't. I'll get this right. Okay. It is now 10 minutes of 8. How are you doing on time? So, plastic bags. So by the way, Susan, I read your,
Oh, good, good.
What happened to you? So, back in September, this year, our meeting September 18th, we had a presentation from, did you have a title on your presentation? Suzanne. Anyway, it's called Single-Use Plastic Bag Ban in Winthrop. And at that meeting, the board took a motion that was suggested by Susan, and the board voted 3-0 at that point to support this idea. So we've actually had a very busy, as you know, we're having a very busy calendar. This is our 4th meeting or hearing or town council appearance in the last 2 weeks. And we're working on a number of things. So this is the beginning of a process. So I'll just give a little bit of the research that I've done and where kind of I see us going. So right now, 88 cities and towns in the Commonwealth have passed a single-use plastic bag regulation. I've particularly focused on, which I sent an email to my colleagues, to look at 6 communities and what they've done. 3 boards of health have had most of the regulations, so 85 of them were passed by councils or town meetings, et cetera. 3 communities, you had boards of health that have passed regulations. Those are the communities of Chatham, Hopkinton, and Lennox. And then the other 3 that I'm looking at, or I'm suggesting my colleagues look at particularly closely, are Boston, which, as someone mentioned, is going into effect Friday.
Yes.
So obviously, we border on Boston. Cambridge, which has a bag fee included, and Watertown. And the reason Watertown is like Winthrop. Even though we're, quote, everyone thinks of Winthrop as a town, legally, actually, we're a city. We have like some cities have, like Cambridge, for instance, is a city, has a city manager with a council, and one of the councilors is a mayor. Winthrop has a town manager, a president of the council, and a council. So even though we're the town of Winthrop, legally, we're considered as a city, and I had a discussion with the town manager on the more marijuana issue, which is also on our agenda. As many of you might know, a number of communities have passed extensions of their moratorium on marijuana, and the Attorney General's office has recently come out and said that you can't go ahead with those moratoriums. But if you read the fine print in the article, that regulation pertains to moratoriums in towns. Attorney General's office, for whatever reason, I don't know, doesn't have authority for moratoriums in cities. And so the town manager said to me that the winter moratorium, the Attorney General doesn't have an effect on that. Now, whether or not, that doesn't mean if somebody wanted to start, and I'll just dispose of the marijuana issue briefly since I brought it up. I think somebody might have a case if they tried to, wanted them to come in because we have nothing in place, no regulations, whatever. But I don't think winter is at the top of the list of communities where folks are trying to locate marijuana stores. But in any event, so that's interesting because if legally we are a city, it may mean that we're allowed to put in our regulations a charge for fees. Because towns can't do that, but cities can. So that's an interesting question. Separate question will be, in fact, I have a lot of questions, so we don't have a lot of answers, but we'll start. The first thing I think is to figure out what the questions are and then address them. So another question might be whether the Board of Health, as opposed to even if we could have a fee in this community, whether or not the Board of Health would be able to do that, whether it would have to be a council to be able to put in a fee. I don't know, but that's another question. So first of all, I think the first question, and I think both in terms of your presentation, Suzanne, and a lot of other information, I probably think people are aware of the problem, et cetera. But the first question, I think, I just want to know from my fellow board members, do you think this is something that we should potentially pursue with the regulation?
Okay, I'll start. As I mentioned briefly at our last meeting, I need a clarification about the difference between a regulation and an ordinance. Given your summary, you say 85 of the 88 communities, cities, towns that have passed this ban on single-use plastic bag ban. 85 were by town councils. So my question is, are we the most appropriate governing body that should be taking this on? Ideally, I would like to, as I said, I do support it personally. Who is the best authoritative body? I'm not sure. Ideally, I would like to see us collaborate and work with the town council and do it jointly.
Well, just from my perspective, it's an either-or situation. I mean, in terms of, if you look at those 6 communities that I mentioned, Chatham, Board of Health passed a single-use plastic bag ban regulation, Board of Health. Lennox, it's regulation of the Lennox Board of Health restricting the use of thin film shopping bags. That's the way they phrase it. Hopkinton is a regulation for reduction in single-use plastic checkout bags. So the boards of health do regulations. In Boston, it's an ordinance regarding the reduction of plastic bags. In Cambridge, it's an ordinance, and in Watertown, it's an ordinance. So the difference in the definition is, if you read what the state law is, the state law allows boards of health to pass regulations.
I understand.
So that's what our authority is to do regulations.
Yes, I understand that.
Cities or towns, like town councils, et cetera, pass ordinances. In the town of Winthrop, for instance, you might have a situation where we pass a regulation to deal with smoking or styrofoam or anything else. Town council could have passed the same thing if they wanted to. So the question is, there's 2 questions, I guess. One is.
So, I'm sorry, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
So if the town council let's use the smoking restrictions on tobacco regulations. They could have passed an ordinance.
Right.
And
Right.
it could be as comprehensive in,
Could be as
could be the
comprehensive
same
or
as
less.
what we
or less.
did.
So the question for me is then, why are these three communities that did it through the Board of Health, why did the Board of Health do it there? Because the town council didn't want to do it, or because
Well, first-
they thought they were
Well, I
the
don't know,
appropriate entity to
yeah, I don't know enough about
instill?
those communities. I think in terms of, what's interesting is the towns of Chatham, Hopkinton, and Lennox, they probably have boards of selectmen, not town councils. And they might even have town meetings as their legislative authority. So it may be that the boards of health there felt that it was important, or maybe they felt that the selectmen or town meetings were not going to address it.
So
That's
it
my-
really comes down to, do we think that they will address it or not?
Well, no, the way I would look at it is, first of all, do we think it's a problem that we should want to address? Or, that's one question, yes or no. And the other question is, if we said, first, if we do say it is a problem, whether or not we want to address it. Or do we want to wait for them to address it? And then,
Well, I do
so it's a
think-
judgment thing.
Yeah, I guess the other feeling I have about collaborating with the town council, I think it would be more acceptable to our residents if we had more consensus.
What do you mean by collaboration?
If we can both be on board with that.
Yeah, but we can't have a joint
No,
regulation
that,
slash
well, I think,
ordinance.
no.
That we would help them draft the ordinance?
Yes, sure.
Assist them with
Yes,
the
yes.
language?
Sure. I don't know
The
exactly what
research
role
and the
we play,
background, and
but
they
I think
pass
they
it as an
know.
ordinance?
Well, I think certainly, we have some, Suzanne did
Yes.
provide the ordinance from Boston, so
Mhm.
thank you. You
You're
gave us
welcome.
a copy of that at our last request. I don't know what role we would play, but I just think it's something that we should entertain.
Well,
And we do have Counselor Corey.
Yes, I wanted to,
Yes,
but now we know he's on record, right, supporting it?
I think the Board of Health can definitely make the regulation and the recommendation, and then go to the town council to get their unanimous support. I don't think
Oh,
you
no, I understand that we
necessarily,
can. I
Yeah,
understand we can.
you don't necessarily need an ordinance from the town council to make this pass.
No,
No,
that's
I
clear.
understand that. I understand
Okay.
that.
But I think it might be more,
So I don't think there's anything that prohibits us, let's put it this
No.
way.
No,
I don't think there's anything that prohibits us from drafting a reg. So for instance, I'll give you another example. Grease traps, which you haven't dealt with it as much, but we dealt with it a couple of years ago. Right now, there's an ordinance dealing with grease traps. We don't have a Board of Health regulation dealing with grease traps. We could, but we don't. It was passed before my time in terms of an ordinance. So it spells out in that ordinance, I don't have it here in front of me, that in fact it's handled by ISD and the Board of Health has the authority to do certain things. We could, if, now Al, I think at some point wants to make amendments to that, he could try to amend the ordinance, or we could pass a regulation to strengthen that. So there's two ways of going. Oftentimes, even if a community passes an ordinance, they might instruct the board and the health department to carry it out. So I think, so from my perspective, at least my perspective, this is an issue that I'm interested in, and I wanted to move ahead with it, but obviously I don't want to move ahead with it if you folks don't want to move ahead with it. But I think that the proper way would be for us, just like even now when we made amendments to the public smoking, we went before the town council to get their feedback. And based on some of that feedback, and at the public hearing, we've made already some changes. So my way of looking at it would be to go forth, if, again, the board wants to do that, and draft a regulation on plastic bags, and go through the same process, you know, of drafting it, and even maybe even informing the town council along the way with early drafts and something. We don't have to necessarily wait till it's
I
all
guess,
drafted.
I know, one other point about the town council, we have representation from each of our precincts. So I think it would be it would be easier for our residents and our constituents to accept that came from the town council. I guess that's the other important point I want to make. I don't think that everyone will be in favor of this. I think it will be difficult. It's change, it's a big change. And so that's another reason why I'm thinking town council.
Excuse me, I just looked up, but Chatham, Hopkinton, and Lennox all have town meeting, which can be very unwieldy, as you know.
Yeah,
So perhaps.
but they do have selectmen too, and I think
They have selectmen.
yeah, so they could probably have done it. Selectmen could have proposed town meeting and vote on it. Yes,
Hi, my name is Cindy Loopy, and I live up in the Highlands, and I'm so grateful for you all for considering this. I'm a proud member of Mothers Out Front and Friends of Belle Isle Marsh, and I'm also the New England Director for Clean Water Action. So I wanted to weigh in and just ask why we feel this is different than the styrofoam ban that has moved forward. I think, yeah, I'd be interested to hear if this isn't the case from your perspective, pretty seamlessly in town.
Are you asking the process or?
Well, you know, it seemed like that was the Board of Health that proposed and considered and deliberated and ultimately moved forward on the styrofoam phase out for single-use styrofoam. And just wondering why, you know, this sort of same concept applied to single-use plastic bags feels different.
well.
Seems like that would be a consistent thing for the
It might be a
Board of
little,
Health
it
to
might be a little
consider.
bit different in the sense that, the food places, again with styrofoam, they have to get permits from the Board of Health.
I see.
Not every store that uses plastic bags, I don't think necessarily has to get a permit from us, if they don't deal with food, that type of thing. So, and that's a separate question, but,
The Board of Health is also in charge of the trash regulations, and I think you're pretty much aware of
Yeah.
that. And in the trash regulations, it talks about plastic bags, and plastic bags are not allowed. If you read your trash regulations, so I personally believe the Board of Health has every authority to go through with this, and you should take the initiative of doing this. It should come from the Board of Health.
Has anybody spoken against the regulation?
Well-
Regulation?
Spoken?
We haven't had a public
no,
hearing
no,
yet.
we haven't, I mean, this is actually our first meeting. I think I've gotten communication, from a counselor, that a store in the community is concerned. And I'm
Yes,
sure
we
they
met
are.
with them.
Oh,
Well,
that's true, that's true.
I'm sure, so I'm sure, I mean, from my perspective, I don't think there's a reason why we shouldn't pursue it. Because I think there's a greater likelihood that the Board of Health will move much more quickly on this issue than the town council. I think the town council's got a lot of issues, you know, that they're looking at. I think, that's just my perspective.
Can I stress that point? I think that's right. Maybe I'm just an impatient person, but it seems like we've been talking about, Mothers Out Front has been talking about this for a year. You know, this has been our big goal, and, you know, here we are, another year later. And it seems like the Board of Health is a lot less unwieldy than the town council. And I have spoken to a town council who's very much in favor of it. your former chairperson, Nick Locante, and he was the one who said, oh, the Board of Health is gonna, take the initiative on this, and I was very pleased
So,
about that.
what
He
I-
thought.
What I also have to say, I also was contacted by the Surf Riding Foundation, Surf Riders Foundation of Massachusetts, and they also asked us as the Board of Health to
Surf Riders?
address it. Yes, it's an
I'll
environmental
put it in the water, but I'm just saying, it's interesting.
organization, and they're very
They
much
speak for the
protective of
No, no, I know,
oceans
but
and
I'm-
beaches
But it was just,
and plastic in the oceans. So
I see them when I walk on
Yeah.
short back there.
Yeah, but that's not the
I know.
association. It's actually a very serious
I'm not saying it's not.
environmental association. Anyway, so I think that a lot of people looking to us to do it, and I honestly think that we would do a great job with this and a very fair job, and I think we would be the right body to pass this, and I think if we go the process that we usually take, that we go in front of the town council, have a public hearing and all of this, we will have wide support, broad support by the town council. I'm almost 100% sure.
And
So I don't think that's gonna be an issue that we run into, that there will be some opposition by town councilors, and I think the majority of residents are for this too, from what I understand. I don't know, but that's my personal opinion.
That Mark Wallace did run a survey.
Yes.
Yes.
And it was overwhelmingly in favor of banning
Oh,
that.
did he publish
He
this?
did not.
How
He
did
find from the woman who was running the survey.
Well, we can ask Mark for the
Well, we
results.
can ask for the
Yes.
results.
Right.
Yes,
And-
please.
And I do
Absolutely.
think that Mark's concern, he knows this is coming down the road at him.
Right.
The first time we met with him, he was clear about that.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to be first. Now that Boston has banned it, he's not first.
Well, I mean, it's, I don't know what he meant
I
by
think
nothing first.
he was afraid of losing customers, right? That
And the
have to pay
cost.
for bags,
cost,
and
yeah.
his own cost of purchasing paper bags instead of plastic bags that are much more expensive. I understand that perspective, but now that everyone around us is banning them,
That's exactly right.
it's, that, one of the arguments is already kind of gone, because the big supermarkets in the area will not have plastic bags anyway, either. And then from my own perspective, I can tell you that I'm from Germany, and we haven't had plastic bags in decades. I can't even remember.
And that is such a good point. Winthrop would be on the right side of history here. Over 180 countries have phased out single-use plastic
So,
items.
and I think we need to run an aggressive campaign along with that for multi-use bags, We shouldn't just say, oh, instead of plastic bags, no, you get paper bags. We should say, or now you have to pay for them, use reusable bags. And I think that needs to be the campaign, that needs to come
Well, I think
at the same time.
it needs to be education.
Yeah, education and,
Educate.
yes, absolutely.
If I can be heard, that's what I think mothers out front are willing to do. We're willing to do the education. And I have had a conversation with Mark Wallace about this, that it can be a money saver for him if you just do things like put a big sign on the front of your door saying, don't forget your reusable bag or whatever. And I think that mothers out front is, more than willing to get out there and do at least some of the educational piece.
And we've committed grant money to get some reusable bags
To get-
with his name on it, and I'll
You
be
do
going to
have,
Girl
you do
Scout.
have grant money?
All we have to do is get a treasurer,
And
right?
Friends of Belle Isle Marsh has also voted $500 to purchase reusable bags that would have Friends logo and potentially his logo too. He told me at the time when I spoke to him, he said, don't even give it, I don't want it. He said, I don't want it, maybe he'll change his mind, but, education is the big.
And I'm going to talk to the Girl Scouts in January, and a number of things to show them the power of girls. They have a brand new badge that's called Environmental Stewardship, and I was going to suggest that they might help design a bag.
Contest.
Yay!
Contest.
Yes.
Contest.
Yeah,
Exactly.
what was that one? What was the litter thing?
It
Oh,
was-
yeah,
we
it's
lost.
the
It
garbage
lost.
cans.
Those
It
were
lost.
cans.
Can't.
Save a critter, don't litter.
Don't litter.
That was the winning.
What was that? Don't be a quitter or something? What was it? Be careful
No, I
something.
don't remember.
I can't
Make
remember.
Winthrop glitter or something.
I can't remember.
We did,
We did have something.
we entered.
We entered. I don't, we didn't win. We didn't win.
And there is another organization, I think I shared information with you, that communities can purchase, like do bulk purchasing
Yeah,
and save money. So that's another point for our retailers that,
Right, and I think the
Will be
Chamber of
beneficial.
Commerce is considering putting out a bag also.
sorry.
The chamber?
That the
I'm sorry.
Chamber of Commerce is considering creating reusable bags.
Yeah. They
So
already
for
have
sale or?
It'll be for sale, but
Yeah.
it'll be minimal.
And I think so many of us would be happy to reinforce this action with letters to the editor or whatever
Yeah.
would be helpful to the Board of Health to work on education and show Winthrop civic public health pride.
Well, I'm just gonna mention to you, Mother South Front, if we take you up on your offer for education, we've been collaborating with WCAT, so I think it would make a great.
oh, we have an inn over there.
Astrid does too, so,
In fact, I saw Mike when I was getting coffee on Sunday. But,
I guess what I'm hearing is a work plan, I think,
well, I mean,
or we need to make
is it your stuff or my stuff?
decision.
It's
Do.
That's fine, that's why.
I have enough in mind.
Yeah.
Keep yours over there.
Because, no, I was wondering, okay, that's.
So, at any rate, I think the Board of Health should take this on.
I was second.
Good. I'll make it unanimous.
You're our heroes, thank you.
Well,
Well, we're not there yet.
Not there. This is,
The
The
intent
intent.
is heroic.
the,
The intent is here.
so let me, thank you, first of all, fellow board members.
You
So-
agree to unanimous?
Yeah, it's 3-0. So, just a couple of statements in terms of just what I saw kind of in the regulations in terms of an outline, and I know Susan is very good on this because we added this to our tobacco. So generally, when I looked at these half dozen, I just made a couple quick notes in terms of what they generally have. So they generally have, obviously, the purpose and intent to start off with, what our authority is, where we get it, the use regulations requirements, approved alternatives. I noticed one of them, I think it was the Lennox or the Hopkinton one, which is pretty good. Exemptions and deferments, because there may be, certain types of, like whether it might be cleaners or there might be certain stores that,
That's right.
are exempt and you have to build that in. Obviously, the next step of what your enforcement violations and penalties are. Effective date, normally they have at least 6 months to a year before it becomes in effect. Obviously, you want stores that if they have bags and stuff, you give them enough time
Absolutely.
to go through their stock. So they're not incurring that kind of a charge. And again, one of the questions is, make sure that if we do add a section that allows for a charge for bags, that we actually have the authority as a Board of Health to do that. And as normal, our normal process would go, we would obviously have a public hearing, we would have, go before town council, maybe we'll do something on WCAT. I think this is a big issue. Not the ones we just did with tobacco and public smoking aren't big issues, but this is a kind of a new issue so I think we have to go above and beyond in terms of our outreach and communication of what we're trying to do and why. So that's, what I'll try to do for our next meeting is maybe have some of the answers to these questions and maybe even come up with a kind of a initial draft from looking at those half a dozen ones that I looked at.
I'll give you Boston.
I have Boston.
You have it.
I do, I
Paper?
picked it up. Yeah, yeah. The ones, again, I have looked at Hopkinton, Lennox, and Chatham, which are towns. And thank you for looking that up about town meeting. And then Boston, Cambridge, and Watertown, which are ordinances. And it's interesting, you think,
Is there a bunch of difference?
yeah, they're not doing. So, just to give you an information, the town of Chatham is basically, you talk, 2 pages, actually it's about a page and a half. Hopkinton is about 3 pages. Lennox, 6 pages, maybe 5. Boston is about 4 pages. Cambridge is actually 3 pages. You would think Cambridge would be longer. Watertown is 3. So, you know, they're basically 2 to 4 pages, or except for the one that's 6 pages. So, and I thought that was a pretty good representative sample because, you know, the 3 towns, obviously, Board of Health, Boston next to us, Cambridge and Watertown have similar forms of government, just as an interesting group. Because I don't think I'm going to read all 88.
Yeah. There is a model ordinance.
Yeah,
the Sierra Club.
Yeah, I've seen the model one,
Yeah.
which I don't think, quite frankly, is as good as some of these other ones. So, but I printed that out as well. So, that's what we'll do, okay? Anything else?
I just want to give feedback to, is it Cindy?
Cindy Lopey.
Cindy, how do you spell your last name?
LUPPI, right?
Yes.
Thank you. I think one of the big difference between the styrofoam ban, that affected restaurants mainly. This will affect retailers, but our constituents, everybody in the town. So I think that's a big difference, so.
And I love hearing how careful, you know, I think we all live here, we would all want to make sure that this isn't, you know, unduly burdensome or needlessly complicated for our local retailers where they're customers. We want them to have a smooth transition here. So very much appreciate your careful thought in this area.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
That is
thank
you.
you.
You're not staying?
No.
You're welcome to stay. But,
It's only going on 8:30.
so, where's the next item in my agenda?
I'm telling y'all, heroes.
So my next item is to say,
Director of Public Health.
well, first of all, I'm taking quickly the MRC update because you're.
Oh, she's before.
No, I know, but I'm taking things out of order. I always have that prerogative. But particularly because I wanted to mention, which I mentioned at the last meeting, with a wider audience, that, particularly Suzanne to hear this, and she knows it already, that the Winthrop Medical Reserve Corps is going to have the Community Service Award from the Chamber of Commerce. And the award night is January 26th at the Cottage Park Yacht Club. No smoking. Cocktail hour begins at 7, and I'm going to be there. So congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
So I wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Bill.
So, do you have anything you want to tell us about what you've been up to?
Yes, actually, it's been a while. One of the things that I did in November was to attend the Mass Health Officers Association conference down at Cape Cod. And they have different tracks, one of which was emergency preparedness. Just as a sidebar, they also had a lot of things that would fall under inspectional services such as sewage, water, food services, food restaurants, food regulations, and I did gather lots of information on behalf of inspectional services and brought that back to them so that they had some updated information as well. The emergency preparedness track included such things as recovery and knowing what happened last winter, especially with the people on Morton Street and other areas of the town that were so devastated. Learning a recovery process for the citizens was a big help, because it's not just the recovery of, you know, you've got to put your heating units someplace else so they don't get flooded. It's also, how can we help the citizens go through the process of where do they go to do their paperwork? Who are the people that we contact to come in to help them? Do they have insurance? Are they aware of the types of things that they should have? Do they have flood insurance? So it was an extensive, one of the presentations was extensive on the recovery process during disaster areas. The other thing, there was a big thing on the Medical Reserve Corps itself, and from the perspective of what I call the suburban areas where there's a conglomerate of 4, 5, 6 towns, because they're small communities that have an MRC that encompasses communities like that, where the town of Winthrop is independent, Revere doesn't have one, but other communities, some of them have their own MRCs, but again, I've always told you this, that Winthrop is kind of unique in that we do have our own MRC, but usually they use the MRC on a statewide listing that now comes under mass response. So if there was some kind of a disaster or something, they would put out a mass response. It would go to every MRC member who's on the volunteer list, and then those volunteers have the option whether or not they choose to go to those disasters. No one in MRC ever deploys by themselves. They have to either be called or asked, but they can't just say, oh, I'm gonna go. They learned that even the good intentions of volunteers sometimes go astray when you're in the middle of a disaster and you don't have the resources. They think they're gonna be put up in hotels with food service. It's not gonna happen. So that was a big thing that they talked about the different types of MRC organizations where there are community, town kind of things versus the individual cities and towns that have their own MRC.
How many, Jean, have their own communities?
Actually, there
Not
aren't a
many,
lot.
right?
There
There's
aren't a
not. I
lot.
think you said that before, yeah.
Right, there really are not. Brookline is one that does have one. They've had one for a long time. But basically, I'm going to say primarily, Brookline and Winthrop really, in our 32 communities, are really the only ones that have what we call our individual MRC. The rest of the communities are on the statewide call list, you know, when it goes out for a response. That's not to say that a community might not have some people that they know who might be nurses. Like I know Revere, the public health nurse there has people that she knows that are nurses that come in and help her with flu clinics and things like that. But she doesn't necessarily have what's called a medical reserve corps. Some communities use employees as their emergency response teams. As I think it's been brought up before, Winthrop being the community that we are, being sort of limited in the resources that we have, if our fire department is out, you know, doing rescue work in a blizzard, they don't have the staffing to come in and help do sheltering, so that's what MRC does. If DPW is out plowing, they don't have the staffing where they can send somebody to help. So I know Chief Flanagan is in favor of having some employees be part of what we call an emergency disaster team, because he feels we bring out the volunteers to do the work and some of the employees are still home. So he would like to see sort of a mixture where sometimes people are required, you know, to answer phones or things of that nature. So that's a work in progress, I'll sort of say. We have, because of some of the summer activities like the farmers market, the I Love Winthrop event, I did a recruiting drive, and I'm happy to say I've probably gotten another half a dozen people who have become members of the MRC. Very active. The MRC nurses, and Meredith's on board, couldn't be happier. The MRC nurses are the ones that are doing the blood pressure clinics down at the senior center to assist the health department. You know, Meredith has enough on her plate. And they're happy to do that. And they have a nice little system worked out where they do it on a rotation basis. And as far as I know, it's working out fine and has been. We've been doing that for over almost 2 years. So that's going on. Coming up on January 5th, which is the Saturday, I booked the Coming School, which is our primary shelter, to do a review of a shelter drill where we will do everything from the call down the night before, which puts everybody on alert as if we had a disaster. They will report, and we will go through the process of a practice shelter drill. How do we set up, where is all our equipment, who was assigned to what jobs, which basically we've done this before, but because some of the things in the Coming School have changed, some of their rooms are being used for other purposes now that we used to have availability to. So I have to update all our emergency preparedness plans. So that's a big project coming up for me that
What
I'll be
date?
doing.
I'm sorry.
January 5th,
January 5th, it's a Saturday.
3 weeks before the award.
Right.
But it's good to go over it
Yeah.
periodically anyways, it's good.
Yeah. No, that's something to do, and we do, just like we have trainings, we do review trainings, of the tourniquet training thing to Meredith, who got us free tourniquets, and we do reviews of CPR and first aid. So there's many things. We're gonna do another mental health in shelters. I talked to the mental health worker and the recovery coach to perhaps come down to the MRC and just sort of give us a general picture of what it is that you do. So we're sort of all on the same page and we understand some of those types of things. The other thing that has to be updated too is also our pet sheltering, because some of that has changed. I'm always happy to report about that. Obviously, I'm an animal lover, but pet sheltering is not a standard procedure in a lot of communities. It's like a separate entity. And Winthrop is one of the very few communities that if people have to come to the shelter, their pets come with them. And I'm very proud of that, actually, that we have a plan that accommodates that so that they're not separated, because they're family to many people.
Especially at a time like that, too.
Correct. And unfortunately, because of some of the disasters that we have seen over the country this year, between fires and floods and hurricanes, etc., the emergency preparedness is sort of really up there as far as people becoming even more aware than they ever were before. I have had meetings with Mothers Up Front and the organization called CREW, which is two environmental organizations. We're going to continue to have meetings, then how can the three of us work together between emergency preparedness and environmentally, how can we work together? They're very concerned about things like evacuation, or how do people prepare, how do they talk to one another. And so we're going to do a training with them to give them these kinds of information. We're going to do programs together in WCAT, which Barbara doesn't know yet. And so to sort of reach out to larger groups so that they understand sort of the connection between emergency preparedness and actually the environment. Because there is a connection, obviously.
You speak to the CREW, C-R-E-W?
Yes, that's the name of the organization, and you're gonna ask me what that stands for.
No, it's all right. But are they
Yes, she
local,
is.
all local residents, or is it regional, or?
The
who are
Mothers
they?
Up Front that I'm working with
Yeah.
is obviously
Yes,
the
I know
Winthrop
that.
group.
Yeah,
Some of the CREW people are from Winthrop, but it's a larger organization,
okay.
and
Environmentally focused.
yes.
Okay, got it. That's
They,
all. Thank you.
They requested a meeting with us. How can we sort of all get on the same page? What can we do together that,
Thank you.
improves the environment as well as emergency preparedness? So we've got another meeting coming up in January with them, as far as that goes. The region meetings continue. We have another one January, I guess what did I say, the 15th?
Yeah.
And that encompasses all the 32 communities that I go to. And so basically, we're busy. We don't have any meetings in December. And hopefully, we don't have any emergencies in December either.
That's a good thing to do.
Yes, that's always.
And no blizzards?
So, and hopefully, before the first disaster, Barbara and I can get together to do a preparedness show on WCAT.
Will be great.
So, basically,
That's a good one, we're gonna.
Great.
Um,
We have WCAT on the agenda, so that's
yeah,
good.
see, we're great.
So that will,
We
when
have
when
no-
are you thinking timeline, maybe
Oh.
January, maybe?
yeah,
Possibly.
because I think it's a little too late to do it
Tentative,
before
yes,
Christmas,
yes.
so.
Tentatively, I'll put it
yeah.
down tentatively. Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jean. We do not have an update from Inspection of Services. So Meredith, you're on.
Alrighty.
It's only 8:35. You love being
Jane.
I
Thanks.
do. So to kind of give you a wrap up of where we are with the vaccine. So we have about 18 flu doses left. I reached out to the chamber to try and engage with some of the businesses that maybe their folks work off hours and aren't necessarily able to come at night or on weekends because they're working. So I had one business reach back out to me and asked me if I would come down and give some vaccinations there. So hopefully, doing stuff like that, we'll just kind of eat up the remainder of the 18 of them. And so have submitted for reimbursement for about 60 to 65% of it now. Probably have the rest of it finished by the end of the week, sent off for reimbursement. We purchased 270 doses total this year. So I've started kind of doing a tracking based on age, gender, if there's a specific sector that people, I split it into public sector, fire, police, teachers. I'll add the business community to see where people are most often kind of accessing this, and seeing if, and I'm also tracking their insurance to see if there's any sort of, I don't know, if we're seeing, which doesn't really make too much of sense, but if we're seeing more Harvard Pilgrim or, things like that, because it changes. Every insurance company has a different reimbursement. It could be just a matter of a few cents, or it could be a matter, but that'll be an indicator of what we can project for future, our future reimbursements too. I don't think we've really done a good job of kind of tracking, certain statistics. So trying to get better about that to help plan for next year and because we can already do our pre-booking for the flu vaccine for next year, just to say that, we used 270 this year, we want to do an addition, we'll stay with the 270. Another thing that we have going on is that I was contacted by BU, and they have a new program at BU called the Metro Bridge Project, and so they reached out to Winthrop because we're one of, I think, 10 communities in the state. So what they're doing, we've worked a little bit with BU in the past in their School of Public Health, but what this is it's an honors undergrad class, and they're interested in kind of spearheading and taking on a real live learning experience in municipalities around public health. So this one class is around public health. Other communities are doing different things. So I spoke with the coordinator, and we came up with a few ideas along with Austin about kind of where their, potential focus. So it's all kind of in the planning phases, but we were talking about mental health, substance misuse, air quality around the hazards, some pediatric obesity. So the idea is that they're going to do it in the form of a hackathon, which I know. I know. Do you know what so I had to Google what a hackathon is. So a hackathon is when they create usable software at the end of something. So they're gonna, so it's gonna be, I'm gonna be going in and kind of speaking to their class, telling them about Winthrop and telling them about our needs and telling them about kind of what our most updated statistics are, and then they're gonna kind of build out these mini projects around it. So we're part of a pilot program based on this. Oh, and domestic violence was one of them, and mental health.
CASA stuff would be
Yes.
perfect for that stuff.
Yes, so that's kind of where.
That would be an action item for these issues.
Yes, yeah, we're trying to kind of see our most prevalent issues that we're dealing with now, and so they're gonna come, this class is gonna come to Winthrop, and, you know, see our community, and then I'm gonna go and speak to their class. So I always find so much value with the institutions of higher learning that we have in this area, like, whatever you guys want to do, like, because I learn so much from them just by virtue of being involved, and we all can learn so much from them, and they bring so much validity to kind of our issues, so I'm really excited about that, so.
What are the timelines, do you think?
So we're starting early January, and it'll wrap up by April, early May, yeah.
How many students do you think?
I think it's about 15 students, so. And the other communities that I have my notes in my office, but the other communities that I can rattle off of it, so they're involved with Chelsea and, yeah, so they're involved with Chelsea and Revere, which I mentioned that we're part of a public health collaborative with them. And then New Bedford, Somerville,
Oh.
I forget the other one, so.
And same approach?
Same approach.
Hackathon?
Yeah, but they are, some of them are
Win-win.
tackling non-public health issues, like they're, you know, the other thing that they were kind of gonna come out of this too is suggestions for policy development, you know, for example, you know, whether it's that we say, you know, it's not a good, going forward, convenience stores should not be within a certain barrier of elementary schools because of access of unhealthy foods, just as an example, or a way to mitigate the hazards from the airport. How can the town, you know, put in policy around that? So.
Think of our wellness community too.
Yes, there's a lot.
A lot.
There's a lot that we
Yeah.
could
Good.
utilize with these folks.
Great.
So I'm looking forward to that. I just booked to have the Dana-Farber mammography van come again in May 2019. In January, I just got approved to go to peer recovery coach supervisor training, which will be a week at UMass Lowell, so that to kind of help out with our CLEAR program and the recovery program with the police department. This past Thursday, was it Thursday? May have been Wednesday. Oh, it was Wednesday. I participated in training the middle school teachers in Alice. Are you guys familiar with Alice? So it's
Heard of it.
yeah, so the Winthrop Public Schools is now adopted, and they're going towards Alice, which is alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate. So it's a advanced. Yeah, it's an advanced lockdown. So whereas instead of the traditional lockdown has always been, you go in a room, you close the door, you go as far away as possible, and you hide. This is what are some ways that we can counter, you know, if there's a situation on the first floor of the building and you're on the third floor, but there's a stairway, you run. So it's like, we've all been conditioned to kind of sit and hide, and so this is trying to change that. So it was headed by the police department, but I had gone over the summer and become a trainer in it, so it was myself, the athletic director for the high school, and then the police and fire department. So part of it is like you do 4 real life scenarios. So we shut down the 3rd floor of the middle school, and after the classroom portion, you go in and somebody has a Nerf gun, and you do like these real life, like how do you do barriers, and like we taught them how to barricade themselves effectively within the classroom. In the event, you know, we're pretty lucky with our schools being updated that, you know, we have great security measures in place, but.
I'm curious, did you inform the parents before the training that this was gonna happen?
Yep, all of the
Because-
parents, they did a public meeting with the parents in September to let them know about the shift of the focus with the lockdowns now, because it's very age specific. So the way that they're gonna roll it out in the spring of training the students, now that we've trained the teachers, and it's gonna be very age specific. You know, the way that you teach a first grader to kind of do this is a lot more sensitive than you would talk to a high schooler about. So, you know, part of it is like the idea of countering. So there are some schools that have actually put buckets of like hockey pucks in classrooms, so that if somebody walks in and is a threat, start throwing hockey pucks at them to interrupt. They call it a boot, to interrupt the ability to be a good target. So it's all uncomfortable stuff to talk about, But it was good, it was effective, and it was very well received by the middle school. So then I think the next one will be to train the high school.
Middle school, and then did you say high school next? Would it
I
be
think
high
it'll
school
probably
or
be the high
start?
school next.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're gonna start rolling it out to, it's now being adopted district-wide, so now we're just kind of going through the.
Do they have data showing that? It's, I don't know, can you
Oh,
measure
about it? Oh,
that this
yeah.
is better than?
Yes,
Okay.
they start the data back right after like the Hartford consensus that came out of Newtown. That what we know is that kind of just sitting there, it's been, so I know that NYPD came out in 2010 in support of it. The Hartford consensus, which kind of deals with hemorrhage control, but they, you know, that their like third part of it was to be a more active bystander and things like that. A lot of states have come out. Massachusetts was one of, I think, 6 or 7 that has actually written position papers saying that traditional lockdown is not effective, and that, so there are some claims that say that you're actually at a liability. You're creating a liability by teaching a traditional lockdown. And so there's a lot of statistics around it saying how much it increases your likelihood of survival in a threat. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not easy.
Speaking of WCAT. Hi there.
Hi there.
So we have had a couple of great experiences with WCAT. Astrid did a wonderful show dealing with mosquitoes and other types of things. Susan helped get some information on regarding the flu. So the question is, I think, what can we, what areas might we want to go to in terms of some other areas?
Okay, so I went back to our
Uh-oh.
minutes from, what month was it?
I don't know.
Months ago. Oh, gosh, it was back in July. No, July. Where we brainstormed topics that we thought we would include. So I'll just run down the list. Bill, massive motion.
We haven't even got there.
Massive motion, obesity.
Is that for me or just in general?
No, it's just a general
Oh,
list.
just a list. Oh,
This is the
okay.
general
Oh, I
list.
see.
Massive motion, obesity, and they're not prioritized. Obesity, diabetes, healthy eating. Under tobacco, e-cigarettes, vaping, cessation. Airport pollution and noise, substance use, recovery coaches, Narcan, P&A findings. It's a long list. Social media, screen time, emergency preparedness, wellness guidelines, such as cancer screening, tick-borne diseases, and CDC monthly topics. So that was our list.
So,
And I think we can now add to that, single-use plastic
yeah,
bags.
well, I think in terms of, you know, when we do things, so my thinking when I was thinking about this was if next month we pass an updated prohibition on smoking, prohibiting smoking workplace, that we should do a show, and also when I get Bonnie, I'd be willing to do it, to discuss the changes that we made both to the tobacco sales and the workplace and public place smoking. Because I think sometimes the best time to do these is when there are changes. Because you
Yeah,
want-
we did say that. We said we'd gather more input and then we prioritize
Yeah.
per our local needs.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so that was my thinking, and then the other thing I
So that
think,
would be,
the other thing that, just on my turn, I was shocked, quite frankly, at our last meeting on the fine, on the CASA fine.
Yeah.
And I think we need to work with them somehow, on getting more publicity about that.
Well, I have asked that it be on the agenda for next month, that we need more discussion and come up with some plan.
Because I was talking to, again, people know I walk with some of my friends on the weekends, and I was telling them about some of the statistics, and they were like, they couldn't believe it. So,
Has it gone out to the public? Has it been in the paper or how?
not in depth though.
Not in doubt.
No,
like,
no, was it just that one
yeah.
article that?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. Is there one or two things that kind of concern you the most, like if you?
Well, I mean, they're all.
I mean, they're all concerning,
all,
I
I
think,
mean,
but I didn't know if there was like
I
one
mean-
thing that
It
really.
was the sadness,
The cer-
feeling
Yeah.
hopeless.
Yeah, the suicide, that whole stuff. I mean,
ideation.
People don't, I mean, those,
It's, that, from when I wrote the minutes from our last meeting, my notes said those were the most alarming. And the thing is, it's not new, it's, as we talked about it, but the rates are going up.
And it feeds so much into kind of, you know, it even feeds into like our school safety talks. It feeds into like our substance misuse. It feeds into
Everything,
our vaping talks and things like that. You know, I feel like that's such like at the root of so many of our public health concerns are, you know, unaddressed mental health needs. So I think that that's a great thing to tackle. Yeah. Oh, you know what, I got too around PSA, I mean, about WCAG, is that, I don't know if this would be helpful or how this can happen, but Brian Donnelly, who is the digital video teacher at the high school, he and his students make PSAs constantly about
Really?
things. And they're on YouTube, but I wonder if there's a way to kind of coordinate with them,
Yes.
to see, I mean, they're amazing,
Oh
like
my
what the
gosh.
kids do.
Oh, but
Just
that'd be
connect me
wonderful.
with that person and I'll
Sure.
connect them with Mike.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, because I think that would be very easy.
Yeah, they do
If
great
they already
stuff.
have them ready, and that's really easy for Mike to just.
I
Yeah,
would, one suggestion I would have, I would like to see, I think we should view them first.
Oh,
See-
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
There's
great.
probably like
They could
like
come.
20 or 30 of them. Yeah, they did a lot on vaping, I know for sure, last year.
Oh, but I think it's coming from the children.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah, that's what, I mean, that's such a great value, like whenever kids are kind of being the message delivered, so.
Can we make that a future agenda item?
Oh,
Maybe
sure.
You could come maybe and
Mhm.
bring one or two to show us. and
Yeah, I can even send them to you, I can probably Google
That'd be
them
great, yes.
on YouTube.
That would be
And
great.
then if it's just a matter of like getting permission to, I don't know if, you know, I mean, it's up on the internet anyways, but
Yeah.
you know, anything with children being on camera, I think, I don't know if we
That's
would
true.
have to just ask
That's
their
true.
parents or
Parents,
like
yeah.
get signed permission.
Let's start
or,
looking
like,
and
get
talking
the-
about it.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
It doesn't WCAT, they have their own school school channel.
Mhm.
It runs on
Yeah, they work
WC
a
so
lot in
even putting
conjunction.
things like that on that channel as well, I mean, for the
Oh, they have
kids
a school
themselves. it's
channel?
not-
well, it's an
Channel
educational.
15.
Yeah,
But they don't do much
Oh.
other than the school committee meetings, do they?
no, they do the football games,
Do they?
I've seen some of the
Okay.
games, the sports.
Whatever they
on it.
want to put on there,
Yeah.
they can.
Okay.
It's their channel.
That's excellent.
Good.
Oh, yeah, actually, I think that they might on Friday mornings, so instead of doing morning announcements over the loudspeaker on Friday mornings, they do a video show. They do a live stream from the digital video studio, but I think it might be, it's either streamed on the internet of the public schools, or it might be on YouTube or on WCAT. It's tied in somehow.
Excellent.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, go back to you. Tobacco, when did you want to plan? If we sign
Well,
off in.
Let's say we vote on it at our
January.
January meeting, and then
So
we'll
it'd
obviously
be
figure out what the
February.
effective date is, but yeah, maybe February or something.
February, March.
I mean, I'll talk to Bonnie and we'll come up, see how we can do a program, you know, Q&A or something.
And, you know,
Get out,
plastic bags will be another one.
rely on Astrid's expertise, who did such a good one.
What? Oh. You just sit there and interview. You
That's what
just
I'm
need to
saying.
have a structure.
I agree, that's why you have to have a structure, you can't just wing it.
Can I just ask a question mentioning Bonnie's name, and it may be out of context, but has Bonnie done any more drop-ins on CASBA?
Don't know.
I know I brought that up, I didn't realize so much public comment was gonna be here tonight. but I really think it is something
We
that.
did get communication. I actually, probably the same
Yes.
letter that you got,
You all got
the
that.
board got, and I gave Bonnie a copy of that.
And I don't think, Jean may not be aware that you did send a letter. The board did
Yeah, we
send
did send
them
a
a
letter.
letter.
We sent a letter, I have it here. October 10th, basically outlining what the regulation and that any future violation could cause the Board of Health to consider revocation or suspension of any and all Board of Health issued permits. Because we're granted the authority to do that. I mean, it was a 2-page letter.
Okay.
But
I
that
mean,
was,
it's just that, I know you realize this, but they are operating in a sense illegally because of, they don't have those health petitions
Yeah.
that they're supposed to have, and
So, action steps, shall we request Bonnie go back out?
yes, we can do that.
thank you.
Any other suggestions for WCAT right now, that off the top of your head? I mean, we have a long list, but this is a good
No,
start.
that's a
I think
great-
it's a
yeah,
great
that's
start.
great.
Good, thank you.
There's a lot of sins.
Covers a lot of sins. Oh, we're trying to
Do you have
promote
anything,
health.
Barbara, to add to that?
No, I think that's
Barbara
great.
doesn't have enough to do, so we're trying to keep her busy.
She does, and thank you for being here. So just, I'd already kind of mentioned it before, but just in terms of the adult use marijuana issue and town council, as the town manager said to me, because we are, even though we're a town, we're legally, by our charter, a city, there's no change with the moratorium regarding the Attorney General, so at this point, they're gonna extend the moratorium through the end of the year, and we're planning on having a ballot question in the November election.
So we're talking 2019.
Yeah. I believe Councilor Boncory is charged with drafting that question with his committee, with, I think it's the ordinance committee, rules and ordinance. So I think that's Peter Christopher and Heather Raymond as well. So, the North Shore Public Health Collaborative, Susan, you asked that to put on the agenda?
Did?
You did.
Getting late.
You believe it? You said,
If I said, yes, you said I said it.
I think you did, Boston.
Well, I just quickly, Meredith and I attended the steering committee meeting. I attended the instrument tool meeting the previous week, so I'll go back a week. We came up with what we felt was a final draft for the Community Health Needs Assessment Survey, which was presented to the steering committee, was that just yesterday? Oh my goodness, just
I know.
yesterday. With a few minor edits, it was approved by the steering committee. It will go to DPH for translation. It will be tested with a couple of different cohorts of members. It's Chelsea, Revere, and Winthrop are the participants in the assessment. We also spent time yesterday on developing areas that they will conduct focus groups on, where they will do a deeper dive. The survey itself has there are two different surveys. A short form, which will just really gather demographics and high-level information. How do you feel your health status? What do you think are the most important health concerns in your community, et cetera? If people then are willing to continue and complete the entire survey, they can enter Ralpho to get, is it $50? $50
Market basket.
gift card to Market Basket. So the word, we want to start getting the word out in January, so it's gonna be a real big push into the community to let them know this is coming, and then identify places where it can be done electronically, it can be done via SurveyMonkey, but it can also be done on paper, where we want the surveys to be distributed, et cetera. How do we promote it through social media? What else, anything else? Supplement the data that will be coming from DPH. They still need to send in that request. That will be BRFS data, other data on diseases, asthma rates, et cetera, prevalence. Anything else, Meredith?
No, I think that's it.
So so like in the town of Winthrop, how many responses are they looking to get?
Well, they want, what did they say, at least 300 they would like?
Yeah.
But our last survey, was that 4 years ago, we got 700. Of those 700, though, the population that gave the most response were elders. So hopefully we'll get a better distribution.
And it's being translated into 3 languages,
So
Spanish?
Spanish, Arabic,
Portuguese.
and Portuguese.
And that's for the 3 communities? Just Chelsea, Vere, Winthrop?
Yeah.
Not East Boston?
Mm-mm.
Good.
So we don't meet again until February. They're hoping to have the findings in July. It's ambitious.
I think their biggest roadblock will be getting the DPH,
Absolutely.
data in time for,
Absolutely.
because they're gonna look at the cancer rates, which are,
Yeah.
all
But
of
they
that.
feel more confident that if they put in the data request for 3 communities, it'll be quicker.
So, okay.
I don't even know how far along the cancer registry is now. I don't know what numbers they're crunching currently. They were 5 years behind a few years ago, but I think that the DPH has done a big push around statistics, but I know that there's a huge focus on the opioid statistics, but I don't know if that kind of transpired to all of their other.
Anything else, Susan?
Oh, just one last, this is some nice feedback. Mark Thine, I can't remember, is with the council, Mass
MAPC.
Council? Sorry?
MAPC?
Is that who you?
Yes.
What does that stand for?
It's the Mass,
Association of Public Council?
it's the Mass Municipal.
It's the Metro Area Planning Council, isn't it?
Yep, Metro
Oh,
Area
right.
Planning
Thank you.
Council.
No, he complimented us on we have a good board and he's impressed with
Our board here?
Yes, he said we have a good board.
How does he know?
Because Susan told them.
He has been here, well, actually, we've been in your company on operations. Astrid and I went to a meeting a couple months ago.
There you go. See,
And
he's impressed with you two. Let's get it straight.
And I will, also, we got a nice compliment from Jomina to the speaker, Leo, saying she acknowledged my participation in the board and said she is impressed with our board. And she said, I've been present at many boards, but you're doing a great job. So that was good feedback.
That's great feedback.
Yeah.
I have great board members, they know a lot more than I know.
All right, time check, it's
9 o'clock.
9:04.
Okay, so the next issue is Massport.
Can we be dismissed?
Yes, you can.
Yes.
Thank you, thanks for staying.
I just wanted to, that's really covered relatively quickly, but we got unanimously really good feedback about our letter that we wrote.
You didn't get any nasty emails?
None so far. And it's been published on a lot of social media sites and, people all were, liked it and were happy that someone said something. And so now we need to see what happens next. I think the Airport Hazards and Pollution Committee is now looking at circulating, or is already circulating, a petition to ask for, to reinstate the noise abatement program, the window replacement, soundproofing petition, and they're coupling it with our letter to get additional traction. And I think that's a really good thing. Sorry, I'm getting tired.
I know, I'm sorry, who's on the petition?
The Airport Hazards Committee.
Airport
Airport
noise,
Hazards
yeah,
Committee,
airport noise.
yeah.
You're gonna
They're
get
circulating this now, and so it's on the online, all the social media and stuff, and then there's a link, you can sign the petition, so everybody should sign it, And it has a link to our letter also, so that people know why they should be signing it.
To reinstate,
The soundproofing.
great, thank you.
So, did you, by any chance, given the people that you
Yeah.
sent it to, did you get any
I
response from
did
them?
not get any response from anyone other than an acknowledgement from Heather Engman at the last
At the
town
meeting.
council meeting.
Yeah.
What's on there? I always forgot. Yeah, that's all I heard back so
Just
far.
wanted-
So, no, and I still haven't sent it to, and I'm intending on sending it to Senator Markey and Senator Warren as well, because I think that's good. And I'm thinking about sending it to the Attorney General.
Absolutely,
I think it should go there too.
absolutely, I agree,
Okay, then
absolutely,
I'll do that.
absolutely. Good, no, it was a great letter, I had, when you saw the comment from Dick
Who
Gill.
was that? I
Mr.
didn't
Gill.
know that.
Yeah, he came before us one meeting to talk about it, so he was a former member of the school committee, very,
Okay.
he's very
I
pleased
didn't
with
know.
that, and had a couple other
Yes,
people.
the speaker on it, you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Should he was.
he is.
Um, So that was good. And you, all right, that's good. So the next thing, which has been on the agenda for a while, is the authority of the boards of health. So, Susan, I will have you know that I read chapter 2.
That's great.
Read chapter 2, made a couple notes. So, this wasn't exactly what I was thinking about in my mind, but it was,
Neither was it mine.
but it was worthwhile reading. Nevertheless, I think probably the whole book is worthwhile reading. But it was, you know, it was basically an outline of where our authority comes from, you know, in terms of public health, it's the feds, the states, local authority. We get a lot of authority either directly or indirectly from the state. And it, you know, kind of outlined how we do things in terms of, you know, drafting regs and permits and fees and, you know, then we talked about, you know, how we do inspections and the due process. And so it was an outline, kind of, it was a process, I guess what I would describe it. It was a process chapter, as opposed to what I was thinking of initially was what areas would be our jurisdiction, which I think
And
you
what we
probably,
must do.
where you probably thought of that to some degree when you sent the most recent
I sent that today,
manual.
because I went back to the state, but that, I don't believe that answers that question either.
Well, but so I guess the way I was looking at it to some degree, because if you look even at the section about legal authority and procedures, it talks about, and this was something that you want to make sure that we're aware of, in terms of our liability, which is always what's concerns me, because even though we're appointed, we don't get a pay raise, we have some liability. And so, not that we would be personally, but in a sense, is, you know, if there's something that we're supposed to do and we don't do it, that's kind of a definition of negligence. So, and the way they kind of broke, the way I was looking at it to some degree was, there are things that we should absolutely make sure that we are doing, certain areas.
Right.
And then there were certain areas where we have discretion,
Right.
where we may or may not need to do something, and then there are some things that we might think are good ideas that may or may not be important, and because we're the town of Winthrop, there may be some things that affect us that may be saying to other communities. So I guess my thought was, how can we come up with a list in the sense, and it's kind of what we did in a different way from your work plan document, but it's similar. A list of all of the different things that we should be doing as a board, and to make sure again, number one, that we are doing what we should be doing, and that the things that we wanna do, we have something in place to accomplish those, and then if there are things that we'd like to add to that, that we do that, and we have it in such a way that we're kind of not missing anything, but also doing what we wanna do. Kind of like what's the best utilization of our efforts. And I feel to some degree now that we have a really good board here, with 3 people all pulling kind of in the same direction, I think. That, like for instance, the body art one, Susan. When that came before us, we saw that we didn't really have any. And so you've taken the initiative to help us do something there. Or like the airport. Astrid, come up with that letter and how do we go forward with it. So it just, I'm sure like come January, we're gonna look at our work plan again.
Right.
And I'm thinking of, and I'm gonna look through, because I have all these different things, and you have them too, Astrid, I think.
Yeah.
I have like, look at these things I have. I have the manual, I have the legal authority, then I have the guidebook, the handbook, get the handbook. Then Diana, we got the 10 Essentials of Public Health, then we have the orientation program, then we have the legal authority, then I have another one, manual of laws and regulations, then we got this one, which you have, duties. So we have all these documents.
I think a number of them do.
And they're probably overlap.
Exactly.
But I would,
and you know that MHB is revised.
right, so
Yeah.
what I'm saying is,
Revising.
wouldn't it be nice if we had 1 page? Or 2 pages at max?
Go for it.
In between the plastic bags? And maybe I will try to do this at some point. But maybe just a list of, these are the areas that we should be doing and make sure we're checking out the box. So that when we put together our work plan, it matches up with what should we be doing. Does that make sense?
Well, let me see what you come up with then. I'll answer the question then. I'm not sure, I'm not sure because I wasn't able to answer it because I've gone through these documents.
Yeah, and
then went to the state documents.
I know, it's.
I think maybe a conversation with Marcia, is it Marcia?
Yeah, but we got,
MAHB.
see what I have, you see what my note is to myself right here in the left-hand corner? Austin, MAHB
Oh,
membership. Now that you treated me so nice at the meeting before the town council, I wanna ask him to make sure we can get that.
And this, I don't know, did we share this with Astrid?
I don't know how many of these you got, Astrid.
Which ones?
Do you
This
have
one,
that?
this is another one.
I do not have that. I only have
Which
what I
two do you
have in
have?
front of me here.
Okay, I'm gonna make a check mark. Which
I
ones
have
you
the,
got?
I have the book online, the book that you have.
So you have chapter 2.
Yes. And I have this, the duties.
Because they're all online.
Yeah.
I mean, if you wanna look at them.
Which ones do I still need to look at? Legal authority?
I don't know if that one's online.
That's also MAHB. Is
I know.
this all the same thing? Can't they just make one document?
No, that's the thing. They have duties, that's 1. They have this one, MHB manual, that's 2. They have this one, MHB legal authority, 3. We went to that presentation. They have number 4.
Why don't they just put it all in one of those books?
This one they don't
A
have.
couple were from conferences.
Okay, this one's, they have the handbook, that's number 5.
But that's what it all should be in.
I know. And this is the legal handbook, that's, you got that one. Then they got the manual, this one's
Yeah,
different.
and then
This
I
one's
sent
by
you
the
the
state.
state.
This is the state. So,
Okay.
I'll see if I can do that at some point, but it's not gonna be ready for January if I'm working on plastic bags.
Okay.
But okay,
Yeah.
she just put,
Okay.
you're getting good at this, Susan, you're delegating. All right, since I put it on the agenda, I'm getting,
Okay.
you're appropriately sticking me with it.
So I'm gonna be on vacation for
Okay.
2 weeks, so
So
I'm not
let's-
gonna be able to do a lot in the next.
Yeah, so here's the first thing, looking at our schedule now. So, I would like, first of all, at our last meeting, we said January 8th, February 12th, and March 12th.
Yep.
However, the town council is meeting on the 8th, and I was gonna suggest that we move our meeting in January to the 15th. Are you gonna be away?
Nope, I'm gonna be here.
but that will give us an extra week,
January 15th?
yeah.
Okay,
Um,
okay, great.
That will give us an extra week, and that's helpful with the holidays and everything.
Okay.
And maybe I'll get more work done.
January 15th,
Yeah,
okay.
so, and I will send Denise a request. I also mentioned to Meredith, to ask for her to get a copy of the keys to the room,
Yeah.
so that we, so
That'd
we
be
can get
great,
in.
that'd be great.
So, right, so we're gonna have January 15th, February 12th, March 12th.
Yeah,
Do we know anything about April, May, and June yet?
yeah.
Let's do those three if we can.
Okay.
Okay. 1 second, I just need to pull up one calendar. That.
What time did you say you can stay till?
11.
No, we're not staying that late.
Oh, God.
Did you really, you didn't, did you? No.
Only kidding.
No, but I thought you said something that tape
4
runs out at
hours,
some
we have
point.
4 hours on tape.
Where's
We'll
this going to be posted by, is this going to be on WCAT?
Yeah. Did you see our public hearing?
Yes, I watched it, yeah,
Were we okay?
all 18 minutes of it.
I know,
Yeah.
it good, wasn't it?
Yeah,
And if the gentleman from the yacht club almost missed it.
yeah. Okay, so let me see, I need to just get one calendar open here.
Our hope is we'll be done by 9:30. And given that we started at 6:25, we actually may have a 3-hour meeting.
Nice.
News events.
Are you going to Germany? That's where you're going, right?
Yes,
Good,
I'm going to
good, good.
Germany on Friday.
Great.
So, school calendar. Okay, so. We're on.
April.
April, okay, so I can't do from April 15th through April 26th, because that's
Okay.
school vacation and we may be not here.
So what's the second Tuesday of April?
That is the 9th,
How about the 9th?
yep.
Is that okay with you?
Uh,
As far as you know?
At this point, I have no plans.
Okay.
Okay. No plans.
God knows.
The second to Tuesday in May would be the 14th.
Is that a problem?
No.
May
No.
14th?
And the second Tuesday in June would be June 11th.
Oh, my brother's birthday. That's good, because I'm going to be going away in New Mexico from the 20th to the 29th
Okay.
of June.
So should we stop there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's good.
yeah, I think that way, and I'll ask Denise for those 6 dates
Yep.
in this room. Because this room's great, I think. It's wide open, it's bright,
Okay.
just as long as we have a key. Okay, let's look at proposed agenda items for January and list of what we're going to have so far. So right now, we have, as you requested, Susan, the 2008 P and A findings, and also the body art, right?
Yes, so the P and A, I'm just
2018.
thinking,
I'm sorry?
You said 2008, 2018.
Yeah, because it's past year's findings.
Yeah.
invites, so if you go over that, Leanne,
Oh. I just, okay.
I'll need to send that invite out, or you,
I'll let you do that.
or,
I'll
I
let you
think
do
we,
that. Let you give
I
me
think
the-
Superintendent Howard. Meredith will be here. Anyone else?
Who's is there a new school nurse for
High school,
the high school?
probably. I don't know if they have some.
We'll start with them.
Okay, so we got the P and A with Casser and body art.
Yep.
Then we're gonna have maybe the authority, the Board of Health.
I'm sorry, but the body art regulations, you looked at one.
I gotta send you my edits,
Yes,
and I gotta look at some other things
And
too.
then there was another example of regulation, so there were two different sets.
Well, you had basically the MHB, and then there was a Mass Gov
MAHB, that's right, I submitted, and then there was another one, yes, so
Mass
if you
Gov.
could look at that too, yes.
Yeah, and then also I mentioned maybe there was something with the CDC you sent it to, I didn't know, if it- not necessarily regulations, but
Reference, I can't.
something.
Okay,
So, and then, again, so we get the P&A Body Art Authority Board. Let's see, we don't need Massport unless you say so, Astrid. Anything for, do you wanna have the regional collaborative on here, or not?
oh, tobacco, we have to do that.
Well, I'm going
Oh,
backwards.
sorry, regional collaborative, no,
Okay.
because,
Don't need marijuana. We, do you wanna leave the PSA, the WCT PSAs on there?
actually, this is gonna be for January, I'm gonna take that back, regional collaborative, because the, we're gonna be promoting the survey in January.
Okay, I'll stop, okay, so,
Get an update on that.
so we'll put the collaborative. Do you want WCAT PSAs again, or not?
Well, we were gonna reach out to the,
Yes, Mr. Donnelly.
the guy from the school.
Okay, so, PSA, okay. And then, of course, we have the usual MRC director and commissioner. Plastic bags,
I'm sorry, back to the WCAT. So I think if we invite Mr. Donnelly in, I don't think it's necessary that we have, do we want someone from WC, I suppose it would be good if we can get someone from WCAT to join as well.
Yep,
Right. So who wants to do that invite?
I can do that.
okay, on plastic bags, I'm leaving on here. Workplace and smoking, because we may have a vote. Okay, and should we leave ragweed on here, Astrid?
Sure, yeah. I'll follow up again and try to get a hold of
I'm
people.
surprised Jack wasn't here.
It's a little difficult to address that in the winter time because, I don't know.
It's live. 59 Cottage, I'll leave on.
I want to add something with the workplace smoking before a vote. We have not discussed enforcement, so if we could have a discussion about that. It won't take that long.
Well, I mean, as part of that meeting, or now? When do you want
Oh,
to?
no, I think it's too late now.
What did you want to say?
Well, we haven't really talked about enforcement.
In
We
terms
do
of-
have regulations, but I'd like to talk through who, how, what, and,
Well, it's the Board of Health and its agents, which include Bonnie or anybody from the Board of Health. I mean, it can be, what does the reg say?
What do you need?
Workplace.
Smoking?
What it says on enforcement? I mean, it's the same as we have now. We didn't add anything, we didn't make any changes to enforcement.
right, but, my question is, these violations can take place in a number of different places.
Enforcement, an owner, manager, or other person in control of a building, vehicle, or vessel who violates this section in a manner other than by smoking in a place where smoking is prohibited shall be punished by a fine of $100 first violation, $200 for second violation, $200 for third or subsequent violation within 2 years.
So I think are you talking about number C, Susan, particularly? The regulation should be enforced by the Board of Health and its designees?
Oh, no, just the whole section. We haven't discussed this section, so,
Well, we didn't change it, that's why we didn't discuss it. It's the same as it was before.
all right, my question is, might it need changes? When I read A, if a person is smoking on the beach, who, are they in violation of the regulation?
So,
That's one example.
okay, so, wait a minute. So the first section, right, is something that happens in a building, right? So that's kind of clear.
Where are you?
Oh, I'm just looking, I'm saying the section
Right,
A
yes.
talks about particularly in a building,
Right.
all right? Then section B, section C and D. Okay, so, I see what you're saying. So what you're basically, I think what you're saying is how do we, the regulations talk about particularly enforcement regarding somebody, for instance, who's an employer, somebody who has a tobacco store, a bar, a membership inside a membership association, a nursing home, hotel, or a restaurant. But I think what you're saying is for playgrounds, parks, beaches, and athletic fields,
That's right.
outside of a building,
Right.
bus stops, for instance, and shelter waiting areas, is there anything in the enforcement section that allows a person who violates in those areas to be fined? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes. That and,
See, C, item C is about the whole regulation, about who enforces it. But I think what you're saying is the way it's written to some degree
it's really, I think it's
towards
a,
businesses or
it's a
employees.
workplace. I think it's a previous workplace.
There really isn't any enforcement mechanism spelled out for public areas,
That's
public
right,
places.
that's right,
I think that's what you're saying.
yes.
And even beforehand, when they included like playgrounds and athletic fields, there wasn't anything
Missing,
really to
yeah.
enforce it. That's a very good point. See, I didn't understand what you were saying about enforcement before.
Well,
Now I understand.
no,
what you're
and when
saying.
I read this, I didn't know if it needed more language.
No, I think it's
So,
a good point. I think it's a very good point.
I think it's late though, too.
No, but I think it's a point to ask a question, and what I'll do is I'll make
Ask
a
Bonnie?
note, I'll ask
That
Bonnie.
would be great.
Yeah, but I'm glad you brought it up.
And,
See, I think this regulation in general was probably written somewhere a while ago, was for workplaces.
workplace, that's,
And
I
then they
just
said-
said that, that's the same
Right,
point
and
I'm
then they
making.
said they added
Exactly.
public places, and so they
They did
added,
just- yes.
they added a few public places, but they didn't talk about how they would enforce it.
Exactly, so,
And that's why we have you, Susan, because you're sharp.
and then, so an individual, if I were smoking on the beach or in the park, someone registers a complaint, would I be fined $100
Well, I think what's necessary
for the first
is a
violation
new
section?
subsection.
Yeah.
Because if you read it from the reverse, if you look at number A, right? Which is
Yes.
for an owner, manager, or other person.
Right.
And you look at F on the second page,
Yeah,
there probably needs to be something either added to those, or there needs to be something, a separate subsection to deal with a person who violates the regulation in playground park, et cetera. So that's what I'll ask you.
Okay,
Great,
good. And
Susan,
then,
thank you.
so a restaurant, an owner of a building, I mean, they may not own the building,
Well, it says owner, manager,
an owner, manager,
Or other-
or other person in control of a building.
yeah, so if you have a restaurant,
So that owner is a standalone, you read that as a standalone,
yeah,
okay,
so if somebody
Okay.
owns the building, or if they manage the,
Okay.
manage it,
okay.
or they're in control of,
And is there anywhere in our regulation that we even talk about prohibiting smoking in a vehicle or a vessel?
well,
Oh, man.
What, right?
Yeah, well,
you could have a moving restaurant. I mean,
Ask Bonnie.
as you know, we didn't
We
write.
didn't
these.
write them. Ask Bonnie,
So,
please. Okay, for the,
So we want vehicles and vessels as well. No, Susan, I mean, you're absolutely right.
okay, just for the minutes,
So,
you're gonna write to Bonnie.
yeah, so I'm gonna ask you about the public place enforcement and also vehicles and vessels.
yeah, right, you know, like practically how does this work too? Like if I saw someone smoking on the beach,
Well,
what do I do?
well, exactly.
Like, I don't know the name.
Exactly,
I can't go to that
exactly.
person and say, give me your name, I'm gonna report you. to
Well,
the
now,
police
here's the
officer."
thing is,
Do you call the police? or-
No, but I
Well-
think on the tip sheet, they do say, since we do have the regulation,
Uh-huh.
it gives you the right to say, Susan, we have we
So
now
you're
have
right.
regulations that don't allow smoking on the beach.
well, not only that, but,
Basically, it's.
but,
Yeah, no, but
No, I
like,
know.
how do we enforce, like,
Well-
who collects the fine and who
My
makes sure
question.
that that person is
Nothing
giving their name?
Nothing
Like,
happened.
can we call a police officer to the beach and say, this person is smoking on the beach? No, I mean, I'm serious,
no,
just
you
like,
could, you could.
practically, I don't wanna do
you
that, but.
could,
But if you
But
had
then
a
what do I do?
party, if you had a group of like 5 people, yes, you would have the,
Or
you
if
would have the
or
right.
if somebody
Who
smokes
would you
in front
call?
of city hall, town
So,
hall.
so
like-
right now, you have a situation, if you go to the beach, and there may be a sign that says you can't walk your dog on the beach between April and September.
Yeah.
And maybe it says there's a fine.
And the police are coming, because I've had that happen.
No, but does it say on the
If
sign?
somebody
Does it say on the sign who enforces it?
No,
No,
but you,
but it's
but
posted.
somebody can call the police, and the police will respond, and they will tell the person, remove your dog
Right.
from the beach.
Right, so
That
the same,
happened
so you
to
can do the same with smoking.
somebody
You can do
while
the
we
same.
were there on the beach.
You can do the same with
Somebody
smoking.
else reported them. Okay,
Well, we say here, any person may register a complaint to initiate an investigation and enforcement with the Board of
I
Health.
mean, the thing,
Yeah.
The local inspection department, so that would be Al's, right?
right.
Or the
So,
equivalent.
so the reality, I mean, the reality is like a lot of things, it's gonna be much easier, relatively speaking, to make enforcements. This is the question Christopher raised at the town
Right,
council.
right.
It's much easier relatively to enforce when you're talking about if it's a store, if it's a,
Absolutely.
it's a hotel,
absolutely.
if it's a nursing home, if it's a restaurant.
yeah.
And that's why I said you be prepared to respond to questions from town.
But see, I didn't know what you were talking about.
Oh.
See, now I know what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Well, and how it's gonna be enforced.
Well, But
okay.
you prohibit certain things, and you're hoping that the prohibition carries weight with it, and that most people will comply. And then some people who don't, maybe at some point there'll be some enforcement, but.
And the other piece that we'll need to talk about with inspectional services signage, they will have to purchase signs, a lot of signs. And the vessels though, I mean, I'm just thinking of the ferry, I mean,
There's no smoking on the ferry. It's not allowed,
right.
so we don't have to
What
regulate
happens if
that.
somebody had a boat that's a restaurant that went out in the ocean? We don't have jurisdiction in the ocean, I guess.
No.
But if they had a dock, if they had a restaurant boat docked, and you went on,
A floating smoking bar?
they'll
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
I will.
Susan,
Yes.
thank you for asking that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, so,
Mr. Chairman.
so we have Ragweed, we have 59 Cottage Park, we're done with Belle Isle. We'll obviously do the minutes, public comment, and call to order. So I'll tell you what I have right now, Susan, that we have on the agenda. We have 59 Cottage Ave. We have Ragweed. We have workplace smoking. We have plastic bags. We have PSAs. We have North Shore Public Health Council, whatever it is, no, Suffolk.
Collaborative.
Yeah, collaborative. We have Authority, Board of Health, my list if I have that. It's not gonna be Authority, but it'd be something like that. We have Body Art and P&A, CASA. Is that right? That's 9 things. Plus the usual suspects.
What's the usual suspect?
Oh, the usual
Updates.
suspects are
Oh,
call to order,
minutes,
public
yeah.
comment,
Meredith.
minutes, Al, Meredith, Jean, it's nice to see Jean here.
Okay.
Anything else?
Nope.
Susan? No. Astrid, I'll move that we adjourn at 9:37.
Second.
All in favor?
Yay.